is Thrifty with Thrifty's Gaming News Podcast, also known as The Playground. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a little bit different. I told y'all last week we were going to start trying to do mic checks and things like that because we've had issues in the past. We do have a very special guest on with us tonight, and usually when we get three people in the chat, it decides to not work ever. So, with that being said, I'm going to have Will talk a little bit, and then I'm going to have our guest talk a little bit, and then after that, we will go ahead and get into the introduction and into the actually how our guests are doing and all that other stuff. So, Toolman, thank you for showing up. Will, go ahead. Tell you what's your favorite part of Helldivers?
Uh, the PvE. That's the best part about it. I'm tired of all these live service games that are, you know, the way they are. I just don't like them. Helldivers is different. I do have some gripes and complaints regarding the patch they did today, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But no, I'm doing well. I'm super excited for our guest today. I've been tagging
Cool.
him and you for the last month, and
Dude,
finally it
between you
happens.
and Hero, we were gonna get him on eventually. Like, I'm just
Man,
happy that the time zone was
I'm a
able to
big
work
fan,
out.
dude.
Faulkie,
Yeah, you can
how
hear
are
me
you,
good, right?
man?
All right.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. It's nice that the stars aligned for once. Um, yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. Looking forward to the chat.
Man, I really appreciate it. Once again, I said it before the show, but man, yeah, I'm not a big channel at all, and you are somebody in the community that a lot of channels, mine included, get a lot of our like more businessy data from, and like the way to parse out some of this. And so, really happy you're on the show. We have a lot of information tonight that has kind of come out. We have some sales numbers. We have speculation by the Financial Times. We have just a lot of stuff. And it just so happens that the Financial Times releases an article the week that I have somebody coming on who's kind of in that world and in that mindset. So, super happy to have you. Thank you. Sounds like all three microphones are good, which is the first time that has ever happened with three guests. So that is a victory and a win. Toolman, I appreciate it. So with that, let's go ahead and do all the things that YouTube actually likes. Hit the like button, share it out on your social media, and I am going to take just a minute. This is that time where I take about 60 seconds and I mute my microphone and I share it out. I get it in my Discord channels that I'm in. And so once I get a actual PC that can do this, we won't have to do this anymore. I'll just do 2 clicks and it'll be over. But I'm going to get this sent over, so give me just 1 minute. What's up, Michael? All right. And with that, yeah, Hero, sorry, you came in during the 1 moment of silence for sharing this out, or I'll never do it. I've forgotten so many times. So, here we go. Tonight we have a lot of really interesting stuff on the docket. There's a lot of conflicting stories, there's a lot of conflicting narratives, there's a lot of every side saying something. Whether you're PlayStation, PC, Xbox, whether you're one of the token mouthpieces, or if you are just a regular gamer who's hopeful for the industry, there is something that is being said by everybody. And so here at the playground, we like to go over facts. We like to talk about things in a logical way, using the information provided to us. And so I hope tonight that that's what we will accomplish. We will be talking about things all the way ranging from, the question that is a company like Sweet Baby Inc. responsible for the gaming landscape, focusing more on social media hot button issues than making great games. Our physical sales for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they're down 30% from Remake. Does this show that physical media is slowly dying or that Final Fantasy Rebirth isn't selling? Is it both? Is it neither? These things are going to be talked about tonight. Our games as a service, the real reason for the decline in gaming. We have WB, a company, doubling down on live service, even though Suicide Squad, its most recent venture, is an absolute utter disaster. We will be discussing all of this, all through the lens of knowing that there's one company that, for all intents and purposes, is exiting the console space. This is not going to be a console war type night. This is going to be a night to sit and look and think about the facts, and facts sadly don't really care about feelings. And on the playground, neither do we. And with that said, welcome to the playground. Guys, tonight we have a really cool guest. We have David Faulkner with us, better known as Faulkie. Him, Zubitech, and Genki are probably the only 3 accounts on X that you really need to follow. All the others are fluff. And I had him do a little talking at the beginning to do a mic check. And so now I actually want to have his full introduction. Faulkie, what game are you playing right now, like currently? I don't care if it's on PC, Xbox, or whatnot. What game are you playing right now, and kind of what got you into gaming?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm currently, when I get 5 minutes to do any gaming, playing Helldivers 2 and enjoying that and meeting some wonderful people online, and having an absolute blast with that massively satirical, very entertaining game. In my other spare time, I've recently finished Ghost of Tsushima and am trying to get started on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I've held out and waited for the performance patch to come through before I start that one. And I've been helping my son with the challenging fights with Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and he's learning why his father doesn't play fighting games and has witnessed a couple of rage quits recently. So, yes, he knows now to only ask me to help him when his mother's not in the house. So, yeah, it's been a fun few weeks.
So, are you watching the stream right now?
Not at the moment, sorry.
Okay, so that's really funny then, because in the background I have Dragon Ball Z Kakarot as my game background, because it's one of the very few that still has a movie after the title screen sits there for long enough, and so it gives something for people to look at while the show is going. So that's really funny. Also, my son and I every night we sit down and we watch 1 to 2 episodes of Dragon Ball Z on Crunchyroll, and right now we're almost to the start of the Cell games. And so like it's been one. So when you mentioned that you were helping your kid with it, that's freaking awesome, man. That's what gaming is really about, and I love stories like that.
Yeah, well, we it was like I think the 20th anniversary of the anniversary of the last episode airing of the Dragon Ball Z series. My son and I finished watching. We spent the last sort of 18 months watching it on Crunchyroll, Saturday morning cartoons, because we don't get that anymore. We just sort of made it ourselves. It's Saturday morning, get up early and sit down and have breakfast together in his room and on his TV, watch some Dragon Ball Z episodes, and we made a really good event out of it. Look forward to it every Saturday. And I think we watched the last episode on the Saturday prior to the anniversary of the first time the last episode aired, and it was just sort of really cool. And then because Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was free on PS Plus, he found it and he downloaded it, and he's been doing really well with it. I struggle with some of it, and he's just having a blast. So, yeah, it's probably something you don't appreciate when you're a younger gamer, or enjoying video games younger, is when you get kids that get involved in it, and then you can, get involved with them as well. I get just as much enjoyment, if not more, out of watching him succeed in something than I do myself these days. So it's pretty
It
cool. It's pretty cool.
it really is. And when so truth be told, my son plays a ton of like Genshin Impact. He loves that game. He is way better at it than me. He loves it. And it's always so cool when like he finds something new and or figures out something or has started to realize how he can like farm equipment and do like he's already getting these gamer traits about him. Or he's even sat there and said, I don't really want to do this anymore. I just don't want to try to keep getting all the things. And he won't play it for months. And then all of a sudden, he'll spend like a week or two just solid. Every time you turn around, he wants to play the PS5. Like, and so it's really, it's really awesome to see things like that. We have a Switch in the house mainly because of him. Like, he loves Sonic and Sonic Forces and stuff like that. I'm constantly sliding a game or two here or there and being like, hey, try this. No, I hate it. Cool. Like, because my buddy has a Switch. And so I can grab a game from him before I go out and spend money on it and be like, hey, try this. And he's like, yeah, I don't like that. So it's just really awesome to see stuff like that. And so, anyways, let's see. Michael, thanks for showing up. Hero, nice for you to be here. Toolman, thanks again for the mic check. Josh, as always, my pseudo producer. What is going on? Uh, Will is in the chat. Oh, he's on the panel. Whoops. Nelson, what's up, dude? Yeah, hey, everybody, hit that like button, and uh, we're gonna just go ahead and dive on in. And I want to dive in with the thing that is really like reinvigorated my gaming for the past 4 months. If y'all have noticed, my stuff for my channel has been next to nothing when it comes to video game reviews and things like that. And it's because honestly, I haven't played a lot of stuff that has made me want to tell y'all about it. Like, and I don't like doing bad reviews. Like, generally speaking, if I'm reviewing a game, it's at least going to be a 6. Anything lower than that, and I've done a couple of them, they're just not fun videos to make. I don't like being negative when I'm talking about a video game because there's so many other options out there that I want to be able to give to y'all. And so I've been in this rut, and I started to play Evil West about a week before Final Fantasy got out. Stuff happened, sickness happened, and I got like 2 hours, 3 hours into it. Super fun game. It's basically God of War light with guns and in the Old West. It's essentially what it is. And I'm not even kidding. Camera angle, everything. And I didn't play enough of it, though, to feel like I could give y'all an adequate review. And so I was like, man, this just sucks. I want to do all these things. I want to play all these games. I want all of this stuff, but nothing is grabbing me. And then my childhood came back on February 29th and slapped me back on the couch and put a controller in my hand. And I have played 21 hours into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And that's since launch. And so that's probably a higher clip than I played Spider-Man 2, and it's dang certain a higher clip than I played Final Fantasy 16. And so it feels good to be back in gaming. But with Final Fantasy coming out, one of the biggest fears that I have, which Sony squashed today, one of the biggest worries that I have is that Square Enix is going to set too lofty of a goals because that's something the company always does, and that we would not get Final Fantasy VII Part 3. That it was just going to be so bad that we were going to have a Luminous production on our hands, and because whatever arbitrary sales number they met, it came in under it. And guys, let's be honest, I've seen games hit 2 million, 3 million in sales from them and get the axe. Like, I've seen that happen. They're Square Enix. We make the memes about them and the jokes about them not hitting sales projections or sales numbers frequently because it's a real thing. So, Faulkie, let me ask you, with Final Fantasy sales, physical sales, being down by 30% in the UK, that's where we have the number from right now. Um, we haven't heard them announce anything. Do we think that it's there's two camps, right? Either it's not selling well or it's selling just fine, but more people sold digitally, which imply or bought digitally, which implies that physical media is becoming less and less of a thing. So, kind of, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think the game has sold well? Do you think their silence is telling? What do you think?
Um, I honestly think that people read way too much into this stuff.
More than
Uh,
likely.
More than likely. And it's primarily because someone's got to sell clicks. The
Mm,
media cannot exist without selling something. They need a way of getting their money, and that's just how it is. So, having said that, for full disclosure, this is not going to be a positive reflection on any media, games, media, journalisms, or anything like that. If they've, if they're saying that the boxed or the physical is down compared to a prior release, and that prior release happened when in a different time, in a different place, basically, of economic environment. Is it considered a fair reflection, or is it just grabbing two things to try and make a story out of it? Final Fantasy VII Remake popped out in the height of the COVID lockdowns and the height of gaming expenditure, which we're probably not going to see again for a better part of a decade unless we all get locked up again at home. It's just not going to happen. So it's down 30% physical. Well, okay, what's the digital look like? Is that backfilling it, or are we just saying, okay, we've got less sales overall? Actually, was chatting with Forte last week on Brap's show, and he was saying that the deluxe versions were the ones that were selling out in the US, and that their US physical for that game was potentially the same, if not higher, than the first one. So again, there's a regional impact there. We're looking at just the UK. They've got different economic factors at play at the moment. And if you look through the buying habits of different regions, different countries, and different um, consumer habits within those countries, you would expect that the physical sales somewhere like Japan and parts of Asia and parts of Europe would always be higher than other parts of the world where digital is more the go-to. So it's just they say 30% less. Okay, great, excellent. What is that actually telling people? Is there a problem here, or is it just a grab headline? And most of these things are just grab headlines to try and pull you in from a tweet or a notification to get you to click on it so they can get the ad revenue up.
yeah, that's generally what the consensus has become from this.
Mm.
Uh, I was very much retro. Thanks for stopping by, man. I appreciate it. David, he said he loves you.
Oh, it's his birthday today. Of course he loves us all.
Oh, happy birthday, retro. Um, so when I was real big on sales numbers, but it was driven by fear of the game not happening because right now
Mm.
in the gaming world, you get a lot of overreaction from these studios and a lot of lofty goals. Like they sh- the way I view it is thanks to somebody in my Discord, Warawana. I posted this and I was like, man, I want it to sell well, blah blah blah. And he was like, well, you got to think the player base for the PS5 is a whole lot lower now than the player base for the PS4 was when Final Fantasy VII Remake came out. And so right now, if it's only 30% lower, it's probably actually having a better penetration rate than what Remake had overall. Penetration rate is just, I don't know if it's the real thing, but it's basically what I call the percentage of gamers available on a platform versus a percentage of gamers on that platform playing a certain game,
Yeah.
right? So the penetration of it might be around 10, 15, 20% even. And if, or not 20%, but like maybe 10%, 5%, whatever. But the amount of people who bought Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Remake on the PS4, it was right at about 5%. Because
Yep.
it was 7 million total as of November of 2023.
Yeah. I always get it. You would have heard me chuckling in the background. Sorry. I always have a giggle when I hear about penetration rates of games and potential audience and all that sort of stuff. I it's
That's really funny.
it's really dependent on. Sorry.
Sorry, the
Just
chat is
just
sitting here
looking at the
going,
chat.
dude,
Yeah.
Thrifty, stop saying penetration. I'm at work. We have a really active chat, so
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all right because it depends on how far the tip gets in, I guess. But
It does.
the
Pause.
the the issue is always um, they try they oversimplification of when you're talking about those sort of key performance metrics and what does it actually mean. There's what 50 million PS5s out there. There's not 50 million people who are going to be interested in playing JRPGs or action RPGs or even that style of game. So when you trim that down, you go, yep, all right, cool. Um, what are we actually talking about in terms of potential customers? And this is where I always find it when things like Spider-Man 2 and the other big games that get in there, when they have these massive launch days and launch weeks, and they sell tens of millions of in the first month, and it's always such a huge game, it's a huge game. Yes, it's a huge game, but have they maximised against their expectation of who's going to buy this thing? And then it's the same, like with Helldivers 2 is a great example. Their CEO of that company came out and said, "Oh, we thought we might get maybe 75,000 concurrent on Steam and maybe 30,000 concurrent on PlayStation. So we built the game for a budget of less than $30 million or $40 million, something stupid like that. We used this old dead engine. We basically scrimped and saved and put everything into it that we could. Did it on the cheap as best as we could, but we focused on value and whatnot. And then PlayStation showed up, gave them a cash injection to get the thing finished, and it is what it is. And then you look at how well that thing's done. That has exceeded expectations like you wouldn't believe. But when you look at other games, like, well, to say that has the game really met or achieved a high percentage success rate of getting out to other people? It entirely depends on the game and how many people are going to play that game. There's not too many people who like point and click story-driven games like Ace Attorney or the isometric things like Disco Elysium. Um, it's always up and down on whether they will or won't, but the media again dumbs it right down to there's 50 million PlayStation 5s out there, and the thing sold 3 million copies in the first week, so it's this percentage, and it's done worse than the previous one. But the previous one sold 18 million copies against 120 something million PS4s. Well, we're not looking at the entirety. You need to look at what the market is actually going to buy. And and again, it's journalists just putting stuff up to try and get their ad revenue.
I like how you called him journalist. That's cute.
I'm sorry, you can't see me. I usually have a camera on, so I'm air quoting
You're
journalist.
air quoting?
But yeah,
That's
I've
funny.
used stronger words. I have used plenty of stronger words.
All right, so we'll go ahead and just kill that one dead. Um, Will should be coming back any minute now. And let me make sure he didn't message me. I'll be back in about 10. Okay, that's fair. It's been 20. Cool. Hey, Will, you there? All right, no, we'll keep going. Uh, okay, so speaking of people saying things that they probably shouldn't, Warner Brothers. So this is an article from Game Rant. Warner Brothers. It says Warner Brothers wants to focus on live service games instead of one and done titles like Hogwarts Legacy. This was published 1 day ago. One. Okay, so
Yep.
this is not an old article. This is not something from like back before Suicide Squad released. No, this is 1 day ago. The abysmal trash that is Suicide Squad is still out there in the world being consumed by 5 people. And Hogwarts Legacy, by the way, was the #1 selling game last year, dethroning the likes of Zelda, Mario, Final Fantasy, Diablo, and
What
Madden,
up, Thrifty? Can you hear me?
FIFA. What's up, dude? So,
Hey, I was talking, but it wasn't working.
oh, did you have it set to allow voice? No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
everything was on.
I'm
I don't know
kidding.
what happened. But I'm sorry to interrupt while you're going through this, but there's a couple things I was saying that nobody in the world heard except my four walls and my kid who's trying to sleep right now.
Go
Hello,
ahead.
chat. Good evening. I was here during the earlier, had to step out as I always do, but sorry. I'm super happy that Faulkie's here. I've been excited. Hero, we did it. Let's pop champagne while you're in Australia out there and I'm over here in the United States. We got Faulkie on the show. But Faulkie, you were talking about the giggling and schoolgirl penetration with Square Enix, and that brought up a question in my mind that I've been seeing on social media a lot lately, and I think you may have said something about it, but my question is to you. Can you explain to the chat and to anybody who hears this show tonight why PlayStation may or may not purchase Arrowhead, especially with the success of Helldivers 2?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Uh, Sorry, can you just say that last bit again?
Why would PlayStation or may not, or why would they want to or would not want to buy Arrowhead, especially
Oh,
now with the success of Helldivers 2?
right. Okay, cool. Well, this is something that I really like talking about, actually. If PlayStation or any of them buy out another studio, who gets the money? Money goes to the shareholder of that studio or the owner or the person who owns it, right? Peoples who own it. The money doesn't go anywhere near developing a game. It just goes into someone else's pocket. And what PlayStation and Nintendo really, really want is content to sell. Because if they got no content, they can't sell it. They don't make any money. So instead of PlayStation, unless they're under threat of losing a supplier of content, video games and add-ons and all the rest of it, to their offering, as you saw how much they kicked and bucked and carried on when they were likely going to lose Activision and how hard they fought to not lose Activision. Um, what's the point in buying them if there's no threat of losing it? Because you could take a quarter of the money it would cost you to buy them out and just give the studio the money to make the game for you. And then you've had a far more cost effective input or investment to get value out of it. And, is Arrowhead at risk of, PlayStation owns the IP, PlayStation's got the publishing deal, PlayStation's effectively owns it. It's as good as an acquisition without actually buying them out. So, Arrowhead get to keep their independence. They get to stay out from underneath the Sony corporate giant, which is a pain in the ass to deal with at the best of times because you've seen what it's happened to the studios that are already in these bigger organizations. Xbox has got the same problem. They've got to pay the dues to the Microsoft corporate overhead. EA, Ubisoft, all of those guys, publishers, even though they haven't got platforms, they've got the same problem. There's a massive corporate overhead that the studios have to be able to back fund. So PlayStation is not immune to that. They've got the same issue. They've got to pay the Sony overheads, and their studios are struggling to do that because it's so big. When you get small studios in, it just crushes them. So if they're kept at arm's length, so to speak, they have the independence to do creativity in their own manner, but they're accepting the risk. PlayStation gets to give them the money, invest the money directly into the development of the game, as if it was one of their own studios, without having to fund them pay back that overhead piece, and it reduces the amount of risk that PlayStation or whoever it is has to cover. And where there's risk involved with these major corporates, the more risk there is, the less likely they'll want to invest in it. And that's where you start getting these vanilla, the big guys do these, we call them the vanilla game every year. the same shit, just a different skin. If we want creativity, the big platform owners and studios, publishers have to find a better way of getting rid of that risk, and that's how they've done it. So PlayStation has no need to rush out and buy Arrowhead unless they want to, but I would suggest that there's no need to, because the consolidation war is done. The ABK deal effectively killed that, and there's no money floating around at the moment either. The economic conditions is just that, 2 years ago there was all these billions of dollars to be thrown at gaming companies and all this potential consolidation. That's all dried up because the investors have taken their money somewhere else. So the threat isn't there. The necessity isn't there to bring them in-house unless there's an agreement between the two of them to do that. And PlayStation, even though it's, Helldivers 2 has been a massive hit, PlayStation's better off having them semi-independent, and just helping them out as they can, which is effectively what XDev has been designed to do. That's the sort of next decade's worth of how PlayStation is going to operate in this tough economic climate. They'll just provide the support and engagement and just pay third parties to come in and build stuff for them, be it exclusive or not. And as long as they're getting the content at a decent level of quality coming through, PlayStation's happy to not pay shareholders money that could otherwise go into the development of a product they can sell. So that's what I'm seeing. I don't see a need for them to do it.
And I agree with you 100%. And, in super ABC terms, I've been telling people, why are you going to buy the cow when you get the milk for free, in a sense? And another question along the same lines of purchasing, the discussion right now with Final Fantasy Rebirth has been a hot topic, of course, because the game is huge and it looks phenomenal, and which I do have a gripe with Thrifty that I want to get into hopefully a little bit later, but the conversation's coming up again. It's been said before, especially with the relationship that Square Enix and PlayStation have been having over the decades, in specific with the Final Fantasy IP, is being brought up again. At this point, this is what I've been seeing, especially on social media from the gamers, more. And I'm seeing it from both sides, right? From the PlayStation side, the Xbox side, and I even seen a couple Nintendo guys saying this. At this point, Final Fantasy is synonymous with PlayStation exclusivity. You just went through that explanation with the Arrowhead. Why shouldn't PlayStation purchase Square Enix if the relationship is already what it is?
Yeah, well, it's exactly. I shouldn't say it's exactly that point. It's a very different perspective. Think about how much deadwood would come, redundant deadwood, I'll put it that way, would come
Yes.
if they bought Square, and then said, right, Square, we've now bought you. We don't need all this middle and senior management. We don't need all this corporate overhead. We don't need this, this, and this. Even if you come in as a sort of standalone thing to PlayStation Studios, because you're so big, we don't need 1,500 employees. We don't need them. And it's all senior and management and studio management and all that. So we don't need any of that. We're going to cut all these people out and get some money back through cost savings. Yeah, that'll go down well in terms of their public image. But then what do they do with all the games that Square makes for Nintendo? Does PlayStation have to enter into an agreement with Nintendo to say that all games will be shared equally, but we're keeping our exclusives for this stuff? Nintendo may have something to say about that, but again, they're paying billions of dollars to acquire a company or group of companies that they could otherwise just spend, 10 or 20% of that total payout amount would get them 10 or 15 games over the next few years. And it's as simple as that. It's just far more value effective to say, right, well, we want Final Fantasy VII series, we want all the Final Fantasy games, we want Dragon Quest games, we want this, this, and this, but we don't need all this small shovelware stuff that you're pumping out through your publishing arms that goes out to Nintendo. Or we don't want these particular games, we don't need them. But Square makes a crap ton of money by doing that and selling them on the Nintendo Switch, because it's localized JRPG or Japanese stuff that they've got a huge sellability over in Asia for. It's again, it just comes down to what's the most sensible way of PlayStation investing their money. And if you've got an exclusivity deal tied in and it's been proven it doesn't have to be for perpetuity, even having an exclusive for 12 months now will get you the kick that you need. Because if frequency of games being released at that higher level, you look at the first half of this year and the back half of last year, it's not like you put a game out there, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and your first 3 months is your launch window. Launch windows are down to the first 2 or 3 weeks because the next big one's popping up in a couple of weeks later, and then there's another big one popping up a couple of weeks after that. So if you don't capitalize quick, your it tails off really quickly, and then your selling tail becomes a lot more shorter. So if you can get an exclusivity deal for 6 to 12 months, um, then that's much more cost effective than saying, "Oh, we just pay for exclusives for 5 years," or it can never go elsewhere. So,
Thank you for that
um,
explanation, Faulkie, because we as gamers sometimes, we fall in love with a game. I mean, we all love gaming. That's why we're talking about games tonight. But we sometimes fall in love with a game, with an IP, or even with a company. Like Thrifty is a fan of Final Fantasy. He's like one of the biggest nerds that and I know that of him. And he likes Square Enix, and he's more willing to give a title from Square Enix more of a chance or an opportunity than maybe he would a different publisher or a different developer, just because he knows the type of games they make and their vibe and how they do things. So he's more open-minded towards games coming from that side. That being said, I think a lot of gamers tend to forget that the business is separate from the passion and vice versa. And we've seen this all over the industry where there's a constant tug and pull. And we've talked about it in the show before numerous times where there's in some of these companies the management is so poor that we use Xbox for example. Sometimes they're so business orientated that even though they're failing at it, they're trying things that take the creativity right out the room. Or sometimes they give their creative so much room that the creatives find themselves in the paradox of option, right? And they can't produce anything worth a damn because they have all the resources they could want, they have all the time they could want, they got the top management saying, you handle it, instead of having some sort of um, you know, management coming in there and doing their job of managing and making that balance. And we tend to make these statements such as, well, Final Fantasy, it's been a PlayStation exclusive for decades. Why don't we just buy it? Or Helldivers is doing so great, let's just purchase them. So it's great for you to break that down so gamers can really understand, like, look, guys, we love these people, but at the end of the day, money is the number one thing, right? They make the games to sell them to make money. Yes, there's a lot of people that are passionate about the game making itself and the art and everything that goes into it. But at the end of the day, if you're not making the money or if you're not making smart decisions with the money, doesn't matter how creative you are, that will never be able to flourish. So I appreciate your answer on that, and I hope that you guys in the chat and whoever listens in the future can get some information on why or why not.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
have
Sorry,
no, no, no.
I
I
always put that challenge out there. Try making a game without money and see how far you get.
Yeah, yeah.
sure,
Uh,
but okay. So Will, that was very clever how you did that. I followed your line all the way through what you did there because we've had several conversations about this. As a matter of fact, the first time I got to kind of be on the same panel or in the same space as Faulkie was on Doomsayer's podcast.
Yeah, me too.
And
He doesn't.
this was
Falky doesn't remember me because I'm a nobody, but me too.
so
no, I
it was
remember you.
it was really funny because Doom had like we had met through Salties and he had me on the same week that I was making a case for Final Fantasy being purchased by, or not Final Fantasy, Square Enix being purchased by Sony, and I had bullet points and I had everything. The one thing I didn't have that Faulky just made a great point of is that's a crap ton of overhead, and I never thought about that. They would probably have to reduce the size of that dang thing by quite a bit. So that makes sense. I will also push back a little bit on what Faulkie said about uh, Helldivers. There's no real need to purchase them right now. I would say that that's more true for Square because Square has already openly said they're never letting Microsoft purchase them. Period. Period. Point blank. Done. They got in bed with Microsoft in the early 2000s, got out of that bed as fast as they could, and they don't want that. The difference is the head of Arrowhead basically came out and he didn't say that he was against being acquired. He just said that that's not happening currently. And so when you have Nelson brought this up in chat, and if you have the fear of losing a company that has produced something like Helldivers, I think that's more of a, and the studio is willing to listen to offers. That's something that would get me to, as Sony, to sit there and go, okay, cool. It's a smaller studio. We can probably get them for pretty cheap. They just did this. It'd be great to have this under us. And
Well,
it does give them one of the main things that the head of Arrowhead said was it would give them more of that access to all the other helpful studios. I think helpful studios was the helpful suite of studios, I think, was the exact words he used when describing what happened after uh, Sony had come in, or PlayStation had come in and said, hey, we want this exclusive. Here's a ton of money to make that happen. They got access to the suite of PlayStation Studios. Well, you have that more if you are actually a PlayStation Studio. And so I think there is a little bit more of a credence, and not a credence, but I think there's more of a reason for them to purchase Arrowhead than there is for them to purchase Square Enix.
well, absolutely, but you have to think, and something that I don't like personally is when these studios, and I'm not saying this is Arrowhead at all. I'm not even hinting towards it. Maybe a little bit. But these some of these studios have been, I don't want to say one hit wonders because they still haven't made their next game. You know, they still haven't continued on long enough to see what they do next and how successful that's gonna be. Now, I am also a firm believer in if you did it once, you can do it twice. It's just the circumstances and money and a whole bunch of other things. But
Well, look at Housemark.
look at
Housemark
Housemark.
didn't just do Returnal. They
No,
did Nex Machina and Resogun before Returnal. And what's
they
really
built to
funny
it.
is if you go and play Nex Machina, the Bulletstorm system that is in
Oh,
Returnal is the
yeah, it's
same
the
dang
same.
Bulletstorm system that is in Nex Machina. That game is a game that I will recommend to everybody. It
Yeah.
is a top-down twin-stick shooter, bullet hell, that is freaking awesome. So they already knew how to build gameplay loops.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is that let's say I'm the CEO of Arrowhead, right? So I'm in a position right now where my company is worth the most that it ever has been currently right now, right? If you were to sell, you would probably get the most money you would have gotten ever. But at the same time, this is where the confidence in yourself and your art and what you build comes into play. Because if you're saying, I'm just throwing random numbers out there, I have no idea. I just want to give you guys an example. But let's say before Helldivers 2, Arrowhead was maybe worth, I don't know, 30, $40 million. Now with the success of Helldivers 2, let's say the value went up to a quarter billion, right? $250 million. Now, do you say to yourself, okay, Sony is not interested in buying me because they already own the IP, right? So if they purchase us, they just get the talent, which we know PlayStation is willing to spend big money for. We've known this. We saw this with the Bungie deal. Now, Do I want to do that, or do I want to maybe go a different route? For example, Microsoft, Xbox. But then the question comes into play is, I know Sony, I know their pedigree, I know they put games first, I know that depend on games, that it's their lifeline for their whole company, or get more money from somebody like Microsoft, who I'm not going to be priority. They're going to just try to milk me. They don't have the
Pause.
technology. Milk me, yeah, pause. They don't have they don't have the gaming um what's the word? Like the gaming, not culture, but the gaming priority, maybe. I don't know. Basically, all the things that PlayStation has, we know that they're all about the quality. We know that they're about, getting the resources to the right people to make the best game possible. But we get a much bigger chunk of money. So I think that would be the question: is not being sold by Sony, keep going the way we're going. Our next game could be a flop. All our value can go down, or sell now to maybe to somebody maybe like Microsoft, get way more money than Sony would have ever paid. But now it's like getting signed to a record deal. When you're an indie artist, like now you get signed to $1 million deal, but out of that $1 million, you need 200 grand to make your album, studio time, all that. You need another 200 grand for marketing. You need another 100 grand to set up dates and whatever for your touring, for merchandise. You need another 100 grand to pay, your producers and your management and all that. So that $1 million, you don't really keep all of it because you got to pay off all these things, and you really end up with maybe 200 grand. Is that worth it to Arrowhead to give up their independence, go away from somebody like Sony who has supported them and they have a relationship established and it's a working relationship for both parties? They're benefiting on both sides. Or do they give that up to take that big chunk of money from somewhere else and maybe throw all these things that or these benefits they're getting from PlayStation away? And I think that's another thing to think about when we start to talk about acquisitions and, oh, this game's successful, maybe they should sell now, or maybe Microsoft or PlayStation should buy them, is that there's a lot more that goes into that decision than just money. There's a lot more that goes into the decision of saying, all right, we're gonna sell and when's the right time to sell and who we should sell to.
Man, I don't know. I'm still gonna sit there and say, and I got corrected in chat by Josh and Nelson, so I'm going to apologize openly. I did not realize that Housemarque had done 75 mother-loving games and that Sony published most of them. My bad. One of the things that you hit on, Will, was the relationship that was built uh, and is being built with Arrowhead. And I think that does play a part, but I am always of the mind that says, can we just purchase them and then leave them alone? Like, because you're
That
right.
that doesn't happen, dude.
I
How many
know,
times does
but
that
it
happen?
should. But it
Yeah, well,
should.
Well,
yes,
it
a lot of
Like,
things should, but
it
like
can't
I'm an
happen.
idealistic gamer, okay?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. It can't happen because the second that they get purchased, there's an entirely new set of rules and regulations they have to adhere to, and as I said before, the risk profile changes dramatically. And then there's all this additional expectation and whatnot that comes with it. Yes, it might be great that they get access to the internal studios and all the rest of it, but they can already get access to that through their partnership arrangement. Um, and that partnership arrangement will have a right of first refusal in it. So if someone stumps up to Arrowhead and says, hey, we want to buy you, Arrowhead, by their contract with PlayStation, will have to turn around and say to PlayStation, hey, someone's approached us to buy us. There's a right of first refusal clause in this current contract. Do you want to match their offer or do you want to negotiate an offer?
mhm,
And that's the because there's no dollars attached to putting that clause in the contract, and it
yeah,
basically means that PlayStation gets a chance to fend off whoever's coming.
yeah,
Um, and that would only be executed if Arrowhead was given a serious offer. And there's only three, possibly four companies or investment firms that would be looking to do that. Only one of them, being Microsoft, would be one that PlayStation doesn't want to work with. The other three, it wouldn't matter because they're independent. But the contract would still stand regardless. If even if PlayStation said, no, we don't want to exercise that right, but the contract remains in place. If Savvy bought them or EA bought them or anyone else bought them, then they would still have to honour that arrangement. But it's implausible. It's not feasible for someone as small as, and yes, it's 100 developers, but for someone as small as Arrowhead is in terms of their footprint size and their costs of running, the second that they get acquired, they have got a massive amount of additionals that they'd have to be able to repay back to the broader piece. And then they're wearing part of the costs of running PlayStation, which is quite substantial when you look at their financials. So, and it's not just bearing the cost of them developing their own game, they're then sharing the cost of the productions team, the XDev team, the ICE team, Evo, the Nexus, and all the rest of those teams that are back-end support studios. They all don't get necessarily costed out just to the games they're working on. They get shared costs across the board. So you would take a small studio, and this is why PlayStation grew most of those smaller studios really quickly or closed a couple of them down. If they can't sustain that level of cost allocations being forced into them, they either have to get big really quickly or they can't exist. And I would much rather them not be brought into that environment and potentially expose them to that disaster. I would much rather see them just continue be out just outside the circle, but still in the huddle, so to speak.
I like that. Outside
Me
the
too.
circle, but in the huddle.
Yeah, I like that. Outside the circle, but in the huddle. That's what's up. That's the way I live. I want to be just far enough outside where I don't get dragged in, but I still am going to have some stuff I want to say about the circle while I'm around it. So I like that.
Because it gives them the opportunity to say no if they want to say no. Because if you're in the circle and you say no, well, and you can't provide something, look what happens. London studios, gone. Japan
Yeah.
studios, years ago, same deal, gone. They just couldn't come up with what they needed to, and because they couldn't sustain what needed to be sustained to contribute, they're gone. Some of those US studios are on thin edge too.
Yeah.
They're really sailing close to the wind.
Yeah, no, people don't understand it's a big responsibility, man. Like when I just went through an acquisition at my job myself last year, and it's the expectations are different. You know, you get purchased for, and even if it's an unspoken thing, you know, which a lot of the times, well, you have it written on paper, right? X amount, payouts, whatever. But the for upper leadership, you know, management, it's kind of an unspoken kind of pressure that they have to deal with because it's a lot of money. So if you have a quarter of a billion, $100 million invested in you, they expect for you to produce, pay that back and more, 10 times more. A thing that I tell my employees and coworkers all the time is be the best that you can be. Not so you can get the employee of the month plaque, not so you can get a good job from me or somebody else. Do it so you have leverage. Because at the end of the day, you can be the hardest working person in the building, the hardest working studio or developer. But if you're not producing anything, look what happened in London. Look what happened in Japan studios. Even though we love their games, even though they were in a tough situation such as VR, a niche, entertainment sector, and we know they're talented. And look what happened at the end. They didn't produce anything. They haven't produced anything in 4 or 5 years, and they got the short end of the stick. So it's very tough for a CEO to put themselves in that position when money isn't the main motivator. Which I don't know if that's the situation with Arrowhead. I don't know what motivates them. I don't know anything like outside of whatever they put publicly. But for
So
anybody else in that position.
So, speaking of motivations, I'm going to kind of bring us back to some of the topics at hand. Uh, but speaking of motivation, seeing a game, we're going to go back to the Warner Brothers thing. Seeing a game like Suicide Squad come out and just completely tank. Um, you would think the motivation for that company would then be to say, okay, wait, we had the number one selling game last year, and it was a single player game with the most minimal of microtransactions, and I think it was just the DLC that you could purchase. I think. I don't think there were any kind of skins or anything that you could get, if I'm not mistaken.
No, there
But
wasn't, except for the PlayStation
it
exclusive
was the DLC, right? That's
pack.
all you could
Yep.
get. Okay. And, oh, that's not true. You could go onto the Wizarding World and you could
Oh yeah,
create your character and you could do an app and it would get you your wand. It would choose your the
your
which one of the
school.
houses you were in. It would
Hmm.
choose all that stuff. And so like that was it though. And I thought that was a pretty cool little deal. But instead, these dipshits are saying that they want to focus on live service games instead of one and done titles, like Hogwarts Legacy, like Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, like all the Arkham games, the things that made them popular and made people really trust anything and everything they give them. And so this is kind of this has been something that has been talked about for weeks now, especially with the success of Helldivers. On one end, you have a PvE type game in Helldivers that is doing absolutely insane numbers. And then you have, well, on a very small budget, all things considered. And then you have a game like uh, Suicide Squad, a significantly larger budget, also PvE, because it's just a squad of players playing against the enemies in the game. Still PvE. Both games have microtransactions, but one of them put fun into the game, and the other one turned DC beloved characters into nothing more than Destiny clone shooters. And so, David, what are your thoughts on games as a service? I know that we only have you for about 30 to 35 more minutes. So, what's your thought on the industry? You have some studios that are or some companies that are completely pivoting away, and then you have some companies that are diving headfirst in. Do you think that Helldivers found the magic formula, or do you think that it was just a game that came out at the right time? I know I asked you four questions this just then, but I'm going to let you answer them now. Go ahead.
And you've been listening to Doom too much. He asks one question with 10 parts in it.
I'm telling
Uh,
you.
Look, someone needs to define what live service games are. And I would dearly love for someone to just say this is a definition of a live service game. Um, Warner Brothers had the big hit last year, but that big hit came with a crap load of baggage around the author of the original content, right?
Uh-huh.
We know that these big companies do not like that. They don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to get involved in that stuff. So I'd be surprised if they ever touched it again. And then they went and took this idea of the Suicide Squad trying to leverage off, we've seen that many Batman games, but Batman does well let's do something with the Justice League, or let's expand that universe. Live service in that respect of having online and all the rest of it, where they can sell skins and the microtransactions, and they can sell battle passes, and they can sell all these different missions and bits and pieces, is an attractive model because it gives you a consistent cash flow for the engaged player base. It's the PUBG and the Fortnite model. But when people are attached to a game like that, they are attached for a reason, and very infrequently will they deviate away. That's why Fortnite's one of the number one played games. Like COD, even though it gets crap every year, is still everyone buys it because they're conditioned and used to doing it. Same with FIFA, same with Madden, same with all of those big ones. They cost a bundle to play, but people are invested and engaged in it, and because they enjoy doing it, they'll spend money on what they enjoy doing. Uh, as for the Suicide Squad, they put out the live beta test. They did the demos. They got a heap of feedback on it. They said, all right, we'll go away. We'll fix it up. We'll come back. It's like they went away, threw 10 people at it for 6 months and then came back with the same thing, just a couple of different colors. But they had the same issue with Gotham Knights. It was something different. It was them testing something, trying something out, and it didn't do well at all because it lacks the key thing that people want in those games. They want Batman and all his fun gadgets. You imagine making a Spider-Man game universe without Spider-Man in it. That's not going to do anything near what Spider-Man will do because people want to swing through webs through the city. You can't expect the same levels of success when you change the formula that worked. Having said all that, are we really going to sit here and have a crack at a larger studio for trying something different when all we seem to see on social media and engagement through the so-called, again, air quotes, journalisms is we're sick of these mundane, vanilla, same thing, different year games. We don't want Assassin's Creed every year. We want something different. Or we don't want the Assassin's Creed copy. We want something different. They go and do something different. It's more likely going to miss than hit. What does Helldivers do better than what Suicide Squad's done? Helldivers isn't player versus player. Helldivers is player versus environment, basically. But it's not fast paced. It's quite slow. It's got very simple mechanics to it, but it's a fun mechanic. The environments that are there are quite fun. It's familiar, but it's new. And it's not asking you to do this extravagant trying to be a movie while being a game stuff. But it manages to achieve those cinematic moments. Like you watch the ICBM, you stand back and you watch it, and it's,
Yep.
it's quite fun. Is it a victim of circumstance? I don't think so. I don't think it's got too much luck involved in this thing. I think they actually sat down and went, we want to make something we believe in, and we believe in it. Suicide Squad was an attempt to do something different with with IP that really shouldn't have been conceived in that manner. But live service games which ask you to get in up front and then buy all the stuff as you go without any sort of depth to content. There's some stuff in Helldivers which is, when you get into it and you start playing it and you realise that, oh crap, I can see other people on these different planets, but I can see that I'm making a contribution to this thing. It's not just made up in the background. And I'm not repeating, jumping through the buildings and battling people in the same manner and all the rest of it.
Faulkie, let me ask you a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, you're right.
Let me ask you this question. See if I'm right, wrong, or milk toast. So when I'm listening to what you're saying and the question Thrifty said, let me ask you this: to me, it feels like Warner Brothers with Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights. It felt like the devs were trying to do what the Helldiver team was trying to do, except that it feels like the Warner Brothers developers had more board hands into that decision making, more money talks into the decision making than Helldivers did. So do you think am I right in feeling that way? Do you think that there was more discussions about profitability and how much we can make? Those discussions were happening more in the Warner Brothers side versus the Helldiver side, and therefore the outcomes show that. Am I wrong, or am I accurate, or am I just out of proportion with that thinking?
No, it's certainly something that was considered. Look, you think about how long back this game, that Suicide Squad, got commissioned and what the environment was at the time. Just getting in the front end of COVID, they've got to the front end of COVID, the front end of the lockdowns, gaming's taking off, they've got more money than they know what to do with. Warner Brothers is not being managed very well. They've got all this IP sitting on the shelf they want to maximize, but they have this fanatical view to be an EA clone or copy, and EA makes 70 to 80% of its money from its live service. What Warner Brothers didn't do was understand what makes a live service game a really good live service game, because EA has more misses than hits. It's just that their hits underpin their entire cash flow. and EA cannot afford to miss one now. So they're tied into pumping those things out annually until they stop selling, and then they'll find a new way of making money. But Warner Brothers is sitting on huge amounts of IP. They were trying to tie back into the Snyderverse piece at the time, um, and just didn't read the room. But then no one over at Warner Brothers at that time in senior management decision making points was understanding reading the room. They were more of a, oh, we'll put this out and it should be good. Um, Again, it was not, they're looking at expectations of making all this money out of it, and then they quickly realise that they couldn't. Then they go into, well, we've got to get something out of it, so let's just kick it out of the nest and see what happens. Um, and yeah,
So,
attempting something new on such a grand scale, not a great idea, and it's never really worked in the past. But they're more successful games from a gaming perspective. So Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, based off a really solid IP with a slightly different perspective. Those games are considered pretty good for the time, but they're not a massive runaway commercial success either. So it's more around what is the expectation versus reality in a lot of these situations.
and I think that does feed back into the last conversation that we were having because one is made, and y'all are about to convince me that I don't need Sony to buy Arrowhead either, because one of the studios who made the game, Suicide Squad, is owned by a big, huge corporation that really does have to focus heavily on dollars and cents. I am not saying that smaller studios and independent studios don't have to focus on dollars and cents, but when you're not responsible for feeding into another part of a company that might be dead weight, you have more freedom because you have less overhead. I remember when I worked for General Motors, I worked for a dealership, did that for 8 years. And when I was in the service department, it was a fact that if the service department did not post up enough of a uh, revenue, enough total sales, and cover the entirety of all of the payroll for the dealership and the owner's pay, that the dealership was never profitable on the months that that didn't happen
Nope.
because the service department is what funded and paid for most of the overhead at the dealership because there's not a crap ton of money in selling a brand new car off the lot. There's just not. And so it was that kind of pressure on the service department sucked every day, every month, hoping that you hit those numbers, hoping that you've hit those metrics. And sometimes your customer care lacked the things that make a business important outside of the dollars and cents, a lot of times took a hit because everybody was so daggum stressed out. And so I think y'all have convinced me. I don't want Sony to buy Arrowhead. Will, I don't want. Good job. I think you
Dude.
just needed a guy with a better accent than you to come on here and tell me this. Like that's what you needed.
Remember when we got into that heavy discussion? Oh man, probably like my third or fourth show in, and that was the discussion like
Hell yeah, I
who
remember
should
it.
Sony buy at the time? I forgot who I said, but I remember yours being Square Enix. I was
Yeah.
playing Scars at the time, but just to follow up with the Warner Brothers thing, something that's very frustrating to the gamers is because Faulkie's right, and I've said this before that we gamers are big time hypocrites, right? We say things all the time that make no damn sense, right? But what does make sense is where we spend our money, right? That makes a
Mhm.
ton of sense because we're pretty consistent on where we spend our money. I, we talk about this how we're the hardcore gamer, we're the minority in it all. So the decisions that are made by these companies are not looking to please us, right? We said last time that if anything, the important part of the hardcore gamer is initially, and that's with marketing, because we can definitely push a game into levels that are very good or very bad for a publisher, right? We can get that word of mouth out there really quick, more than they could with their advertisement dollars if it's done correctly. And I think that's part of the big success with Helldivers is that once people started playing the game, we immediately jumped on social media, advertised the hell out of the game. I mean, I've been seeing nothing but Instagram reels, videos, people just making memes of Helldivers, and that definitely adds to the success.
Well,
So the
and Helldivers has joined in on the fun with us.
and yes, they've
Like,
been
and
communicative.
I say with us because I feel like I'm a part of the damn community by sheer proxy. I still don't have the
Yeah,
game, but everybody
yeah,
I know has played it and is talking about it and putting these memes up and interacting with the developers. The developers are coming out and memeing on us saying, "Hey, there's this
yeah,
guy named Joel who's running the whole fucking thing. He's going to come after y'all." They gave us an enemy outside of world to go, "All right."
Thrifty.
Like that's
I
so cool.
remember, dude, I have 1.8 million impressions on the meme I put with suffering from success with the Rick Ross freak. It was even on YouTube videos like these.
I
Now
know.
I'm Faulkie over here, quote unquote, guys, right? Even these journalists were putting it up on their, influencer thing. Like, but he's absolutely right. But the thing that's really frustrating about the Warner Brothers situation is that, it's like that meme with the grandpa. Grandpa, I'm tired. Well, keep on digging.
That's
I
too
feel
dang
like,
bad.
yeah, that's too dang bad, right? I feel like that's the attitude a lot of these developers should make, right? I feel like, okay, make the game fun. You don't have to make it a $200 million profit. Make it a $20 million profit and keep chipping at it. Because in my perspective is okay, if you make 5 games and each of them they're good, right? They're not shitty, but they're nothing to write home about. But they're making 15, $20 million profit. Well, in 5 games, now you have $100 million profit. I feel like they're just swinging for the fence so damn hard, and the misses are so damn big that is creating problems in the industry. And another thing that I have a big problem with Warner Brothers in specific with this situation during with the live service is that this is another benefit of having the hardcore gamer, right? Because the hardcore gamer is able to basically pinpoint the issues that the game has, right? We want to play as Batman, we want to play as Superman, we don't want to play as Captain Boomerang, right? Captain Boomerang isn't even known by the majority of people. And
Nope.
something the Marvel universe did is they started off with Iron Man. Then at the end of Iron Man end credit scene, they give you a sneak peek of what was next, and that got people excited. And then we get the Marvel universe. I feel like Warner Brothers is really missing the boat, and we're picking on them right now. But a lot of publishers and developers are missing the boat because they're jumping too many steps because of their greed, and
But they have the
I,
talent. That's what pisses me off
they
is they
do,
have
and
the
that's what makes me
talent.
mad. Yeah,
And Falky, you said we're going to jump into the next topic because I really, really want to get you on here and get your thoughts on the gaming industry as a whole. So I'm going to pit two articles kind of next to each other. Um, the first one also, hey, if you're in the Discord, guys, y'all can go into the thrifty content updates every Wednesday, and I have been posting the articles that y'all can read for where I get this information from. Some of this has been sent from Will, some of it is stuff I found today, some of it is stuff from the Discord. And so, like, you can actually kind of follow along in the show if you want to. And so, here we go. It's from the Financial Times, and I'll just read the headline. Sony and Nintendo left to battle console wars as Microsoft signals exit. Okay? It's the headline for that one. Then the other one is from Metro saying Xbox sales dropped 17% in 2023 as PS5 makes up over half of UK console market. Then I'm going to do one more thing because there's this narrative. I mentioned it at the beginning that gaming is dying, gaming is unhealthy, gaming is going in the toilet, gaming is terrible. Look at all these layoffs. Gaming industry is bad. But then, and I actually have been on the end that gaming is getting back to normal from, and they're still bigger than they were before COVID started. So COVID started, everybody started hiring because board game market, TCG market, video game market, anything at home spiked. And so these companies started hiring, trying to capitalize on that success. It's not a hot take, it's not a new take, and I'm not the first person to say this. And so now that people are allowed to go out of the house, they're not at home as much anymore. And therefore, the things that they spend money on at home have naturally gone down. It's hit the board game industry and it's hit the video game industry pretty freaking hard. So, the other thing I wanted to point out, though, as kind of a third section of this, was something I got from Zubitech. Remember, I said there's 3 people y'all should follow, and sadly, I just found out that I wasn't following Faulkie last week, and I about kicked myself in the rear end for it because I wasn't following him, and that's stupid on my part. Zubitech posted this ERA 2023 report UK gaming market. Video games make up 4.73 billion of the total market, 2.9% year over year. Retail sales of games, hardware, 934 pounds, 10% up, 10.8% up year over year. Physical software sales, hey, um, Will, you'll be really happy to hear this. Physical software sales, 495 million pounds, up 4.4% year over year.
Let's get it.
Right?
Shout out to
Smartphones,
Hero, who's a
most
physical
popular
guy.
device for playing games, 35.6%, consoles 25.8%. PlayStation Plus is the most popular online subscription service at 45.7%, and then Game Pass is trailing behind, but that's normal at 39.1%. So, like, he didn't even have to put that. That's just Zuby being Zuby. So, like,
Yes, I know. That's why I love Zuby. Bro, he's a beast.
so, Faulky, I know you got to go here in about 10 to 12. So, let me ask you, with all of these different things happening, the layoffs, all the sales numbers being great for PlayStation, the gaming market actually growing, at least by the UK, or in the UK. What are we to make of all this? Like, you're the financial guy. You are in this world. Is gaming dying, or is it just Xbox that is dying and people are being loud about it, including my channel?
People are trying to drag it down,
Right,
PlayStation down with them.
and just want to drag PlayStation and Nintendo down with them. PlayStation is the beat out Nintendo for the first time. Now, granted, damn it, the PS5 is 3 years old. Please, let's not take this as a huge victory because the Switch is 8 years old. So, like,
Yeah.
let's understand that we're fighting not fair on that front. But Faulky, I'm gonna shut up again, and I'm gonna let you kind of answer that. Where do you think the gaming market is in a business sense?
It's flat. So
It's flat. Okay.
I'm just trying to think about the nice way of saying this. I'll give you a perspective. So there's some research that's been done by Grandview Research Analysts, and they back in 12 months ago, they did a review of the compounded annual growth rate of the video game market entirety. And they said that between the base year of 2022 and 2030, they expected that the video game industry or market would grow by 13.4% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. It was using the base year 2022. And the data was from 2028 to 2021. So they've picked the best years possible and then made an extrapolation and said, it's going to do this. It's going to go gangbusters. Last year, PlayStation came out, and when they did their market segment, they said the gaming category growth would be at best 2.2% compounded annual growth rate between 2023 and 2027. So the immediate next 4 years, which was their mid-range plan. The console industry was going to, part of that industry would grow at 0.6% compounded annual growth rate. So what that means is it's pretty much not growing like it otherwise could have based off the COVID years. So when something's not growing, straight away there's implications, because if the market's not growing, then you've got to increase your share in that market to keep your growth rate up. If you already dominate that market, your chance of getting more market share is diminishing. If you then take into account that the costs are increasing, but the revenue side is not increasing at the same rate as the costs, you then start getting squeezed, which is where PlayStation is at the moment. They're getting squeezed like crazy because they've got increasing costs, but the revenue's flatlining. And when I say flatline, I don't mean they've got no revenue. They've got record amounts of revenue. It's just not growing at the same rate as what the costs are. So then you get these operating income margins, which are starting to get razor thin. What do they do then? They still need to put money in the bank to fund the next round of games. They need to put money in the bank to fund other investments. So that's when they start cost cutting, which is what they've already started doing. And they're all doing it, not just PlayStation. Everyone's doing it because the rate of growth of revenue has stalled. The rate of growth in the market has stalled. Then you have to start looking at the segments within the market where you can grow to get that extra revenue. And consoles is growing at a slow rate. Mobile is growing at a decent rate, but PC is not growing. PC is stagnant. So that PC as a part of the overall gaming piece is not necessarily going to get bigger, but PlayStation doesn't exist in the PC area but for half a dozen games. So if they can then expand into that and make some money out of that segment, well, their revenue will grow for minimal input cost. That's why you're seeing this shift that they flagged years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. They said they're going to do it because they've got to find a way of growing where their revenue's coming from if the market itself is not growing. And they've all got the same problem. Those that were platform agnostic have now got to find different ways of doing it. But Xbox is probably more on the hook needing to do it because their costs are exorbitant and the thing's always run at a loss. But they're in a better position to be able to spread out and take advantage of those other parts of the market. But the issue is that not that gaming is dying, certainly not. You can't say that the biggest entertainment medium by far, which is nearly twice as big as what movies and TV is now, is dying just because it's not growing. PlayStation's going to do over $30 billion in revenue this year. Record revenue for them, 30 billion US. That's a huge amount of money. You can't tell me that they're struggling because of their revenue is an issue. The issue is the cost that they're outlaying. For what have they done? $22 billion year to date to the end of December. And they've got just on $1 billion worth of operating income that they've still got to then use to fund all their balance sheet purchases. So asset purchases, research and development costs, inventory production and all the rest of it. That's a horrible amount of return for the amount of, that's left over from the amount of money that they generated. But cost control is easy. You have immediate control over your costs. You don't have immediate control over your revenue. Xbox's problem is their revenue. They just can't generate enough to sustain what they need to. When you've got that many studios that are not performing well, that are not releasing games, and you've got all that additional overhead that they've got to carry because they're part of Microsoft, not because they're part of some other smaller company. If Xbox got sold off tomorrow to someone like Savvy, who just said, we're going to have the whole thing, Xbox is just going to be its own thing. That's it. We'll cut out all the stuff we don't need. They'd probably drop 1,200 jobs. And Activision, Bethesda, all the Xbox studios, all the rest of it, happy days, done. You would probably find that they would improve their bottom line by about $2 billion because they don't have all that overhead allocations and corporate bullshit that they have to deal with from the other areas. And they would be able to run their console at a much tighter margin because they would be getting more out of the back end of the storefront. But that's, that's just the structure of them all. So to compare them all is a bit difficult. But again, sorry for the sort of scattergun approach to the answer, but the issue is not that gaming is stalled, that gaming is dying, that everything's doom and gloom. what's happening is a readjustment, as you said, coming out of the COVID stuff, is a readjustment to the current economic factors of we've got plenty of revenue, but we're spending too much money. We've got people making investments into creative ideas that are never going to be commercially successful, so someone has to tell them to stop. And you've seen it with Hiroki Totoki and a couple of others that, Jim Ryan's retiring. Jim has always been criticised for being too much of a businessman. I can tell you right now, he is a gaming developer's best friend, him and Herman, when you see what Totoki's going to do, because he comes from a background of cost accounting. He is a financial person who is able to wield a razor like you wouldn't believe. And he's got a team of people around him now, like Lin Tao and others, who have been saying, our costs are out of control, we're going to rein them in. And it was flagged 12 to 18 months ago when they did that last mid-range plan, and they said, and this is before Totoki was the chief ops officer and Ryan was leaving and all the rest of it, they said, we've got a problem with our costs. They're getting out of control, you got to rein them in. And the studios have been given 12 to 18 months to rein them in and they haven't succeeded. So now Big Daddy Sony's going to come in and do what PlayStation bosses couldn't do. And rightly or wrongly, it needs to happen. Because you can't have those massive US studios sitting there doing all this, it's great to do all this mocap work and all this other stuff, pissing thousands of dollars an hour up the wall, to then turn around and go, oh crap, our last big game out of Santa Monica Studios cost us $300 million. Now we've got to sell 10 million copies of it just to break even. Like, that ain't right. Particularly when you see how good some of the smaller studios can produce games, and even their independent partners can produce games that make big contributions. You'd be better off to have 10 second-party studios do what Helldivers has done and contribute than one major first-party studio take 6 years to deliver something that gets the same result, because the risk is so much bigger.
So something you said right there was something that we actually talked about last week because we were talking about the success of Helldivers 2. And once again, guys, I'm not going to front and say that I own the game or that I played a minute of it because I haven't.
I
But
have.
I know, I know that Will has, and I
I
know
got the
that a ton of
platinum in it.
folks, I know that a ton of folks in the community have. So, Faulkie, I got you. I think I have you for like 4 more minutes. So I'm going to ask this question real quick and let you answer. Do you think $40 games or $50 games, because of the success of things like Helldivers 2, Miles Morales, Prince of Persia, Assassin's Creed Mirage, do you see the gaming industry kind of pulling towards that direction going forward?
No.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'll elaborate on that. The quality of the indie game is coming up leaps and bounds. The quality of the AA game from small studios is improving out of sight over the last couple of years because of the tools and the engines that are available for people to make games. And I'll use Quantum Error as an example. Now, rightly or wrongly, whether people have played or not played that game, love it, hate it, whatever, 4 people built that game. 4. If they had another half a dozen people working on that game, it could have been a lot better at launch. But that 4 people built that game. So that studio is sustainable. They just need a little bit of sprinkle some magic on top, and the thing goes from being a 6 out of 10 to an 8 or a 9 out of 10, and it's a $40 game. Great. 4 people built the damn thing. You look at, again, Helldivers. There's 100 people involved in building that game, plus some additionals that have been tagged in from different spots to help with stuff. $40 game. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a really good game. And, Kenna Bridge of Spirits and Sifu's another one. 30, 40, 50 person studios that are building these games that are filling out catalogs really quickly. And then you get games like, there's monster games like Yakuza. Those games are huge, but they're not $250 million budget games. They're $80, $100, $110 million budget games coming out of the bigger publishers. And you get things like, what's the one with all the rats in it?
Plague Tale.
Plague's Tale.
Plague Tale. You get those sort of games coming through, and they're around the $40, $50 mark as well. They're actually quite a higher quality. So Do we think that it's going to pivot and go in that direction? I don't think so, because those games are just becoming more prevalent. But the AAA games are going to become a step above what we've seen recently, because the real optimization of the current platforms is about to start popping out. We haven't really seen these PlayStation 5s and the Series X and all the rest of it really be pushed. And what a AAA game is going to be is if we want all this stuff in it, they'll find a more cost-effective way of doing it or delivering it to us. But there's still going to be a demand for those big tentpole AAA games. They just might not be 10 a year. We might be winding back to 3 or 4 really big AAA games, and the other ones, which are borderline, may just carve some stuff out and drop back to being a really good AA game. And then, the overall quality increases. But I don't think there's this lesser appetite for those big tentpole games, because there's always ever been 3 or 4 a year that pop out from, Sony only ever really does 3 or 4 first parties a year on a really good year. Some years they might only do 2, but people are up in arms because, last year we got 5 first party games came out. Oh, that's not enough. I was like, well, Xbox released 2 and they've got 23 studios. It's all those stupid arguments. But you look at I love indie games. I love the cool things that can come from those smaller games. And if there's a market area there for them to exist in, that's great. But I don't think that it's going to pivot back to $40 and $50 games as a norm. I still think there's plenty of demand there for those big end games.
Okay. Well, man,
I agree.
Yes, I do too, and I know that was kind of man, like a pat on the head. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just trying to be respectful of your time.
That's all right.
David, where can folks find you?
You can find me sitting in my home office at the moment, nursing a cup of coffee and looking at this afternoon outside going, geez, I wish it was outside. You can find me on Twitter at Faulkie87. You can find me slumming around on some other podcasts. If you keep an eye out on Twitter, you'll see where I'm popping up next. Otherwise, if you've got any questions, queries, or comments about what we spoke about today, I'm more than happy to have that conversation.
Now, Doomsayer, are y'all back to doing a every weekend thing?
No, it's
Okay.
just whenever he gets the opportunity to
Okay.
plug his gear in and tell me the night before that I've got to get my ass up at 5 a.m. to get on his show.
Jeez.
That's awesome. He's trying so hard. He loves doing it so much, but the
Yeah.
guy has no time for anything. Okay.
No.
All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you again. I know the schedule's a little wonky for you, so I really do appreciate it, man.
Yes, thank you,
no,
David.
that's no trouble at all. No, I'm
So,
glad to be on. Thanks for having me. Have a lovely weekend and keep safe.
heck yeah,
Thank you,
man.
David.
Yeah, that was, guys, go follow him. I have his, if you follow me on X, I have his profile linked in my most recent post, and I'm going to put it in the description once we get done and once everything finalizes on this.
Dude, I retweet something from Faulkie at least once, twice a week. Like,
Yeah.
please follow him. Tons of great information. Same thing with Zuby Tech. These guys just know what they're talking about, and they break it down in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, that's why I like the way he answered that last one, because he answered it and was like, okay, hang on. Let me go ahead and give you an example here. Because I'm sitting
Yeah.
here going, yeah, that's great. Can you explain what you mean by that? Like, explain to me like I think box make picture, please. Because that's the level of stuff you're working with when it comes to me. Box makes picture, and that's the good thing. So, Will, I know that I asked him a lot. I asked him a couple things there at the end. Uh, and I kind of didn't get back to you because I was trying to get him in before he had to go.
Nope. I was trying to
Um,
get to him before he had to go. What are you talking about?
bro, I was like, I have left Will on 2 questions now and not had his opinion, but I
I told
really,
you that once you got David on the podcast, I'm just gonna hang back and listen because dude
I'm
is
just gonna
just
sit here.
amazing. He makes very good points and good perspectives. And look, I don't agree with 100% with David all the time, but David actually has good points. And what I like most about him is that not only is the information accurate, but it comes from a place of experience, which is
Yes.
huge. And finally, it's black and white. He's usually not picking a side. He's just saying how it is, and he translates it for you to understand it. So it just makes it very palatable and good information.
So, without sounding like we're trying to slob on his knob, let's
On
go
this
ahead and
knob,
move on.
yeah.
Because I think we're going to get some brown stuff on our nose if we don't stop. Um, okay, so here's the long and the short of it. Sony is there's a lot of stuff happening in gaming right now. There's a pivot that I think is happening in gaming right now. And it's a pivot that's also happening across other forms of media. And a lot of it is going to pull us into our uh, kind of our last topic, but it's going to feed into everything else that we've discussed: game sales, revenue cost, uh, studios putting their freaking foot in their mouth. It's interesting, and it's you find through this thing that we're about to talk about. This isn't the only company that is in this circle. So what I'm talking about, and I didn't put much in the title tonight, but I put the name because the company is a little Sue happy, and I don't feel like getting hit with anything. So I just put their name in the title. They're called Sweet Baby Inc. They are a diversity, equity, and inclusivity firm. Yes, that's a fucking thing. It basically means that if you write a script for a movie, you send it to this firm. The firm looks over the script, circles it like a fourth grade teacher, and says, hey, change the color of this person, change the sexual orientation of this person. These two things shouldn't happen because you're leaving out this people group or this thing. And so you have companies that are doing this that other major corporations, especially in the uh, entertainment sector, they're going to these companies and saying, hey, can you please make sure that this is okay for Western audiences? And the reason why I say Western audiences is because when Spider Man 2 came out, Insomniac made a big, huge grandstand, which is all it is. It's fucking grandstanding, to sit there and say, we stand with all these people. We stand with all of this diverse groups and all this. Look at how many characters we have in the game. We stand with them. But when their money is affected, as it would have been in India, they say, oh, wait, never mind. We stand with you unless our money is affected, and all of that crap was not in the game. So the people in India
Hmm.
got to play just a story of Spider-Man. That's it. Nothing else.
Yep. But
And
Thrifty,
oh, sorry, go
to
ahead.
make it very clear with you guys, what Thrifty just explained, and by the way, I'm I'm knowledgeable in this subject. Me and Nelson have actually been sharing information about this for
Yep.
weeks now.
Critical Drinker did a good coverage on it, and then the
Yes,
Quartering has done some really good coverage for the
really
past
good.
few days.
Yes. I actually
Uh,
think I retweeted the Critical Drinkers video
you did.
yesterday, the day
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before. Okay. But the big thing with this company, right? I don't even want to say their name because their name to me is disgusting.
It is really
But
disgusting.
the big thing with this, you guys are saying, oh, well, diversity, all that, right? Could be good, could be bad. Absolutely. It's about your perspective. But the reality is, gamers don't want this in their shit, right? We want good stories. If the story requires a specific type of character, race, religion, ethnicity, where it's from, put it in there. Let's make the story good and apply the characters that need to, right?
Right.
But the
Static
reason
Shock.
why
Perfect
Static
example.
Shock, very perfect, yes, great example. But now the big thing that people are really glossing over this because I actually tweeted or commented on uh Broken Games on Twitter. He said, "Guys, you guys are going after this company, but you are forgetting that this company gets hired. The developer or the publisher is the one that's making the call. The developer, the publisher are the ones that accept the changes, and they're the ones that put the game out, which is a solid argument, right? But what people don't understand is there is, I forget the acronym, but it stands for something, diversity, um, thrifty, what,
It's
environmental
no diversity, equity, inclusivity.
equity, inclusivity. There we go. Thank you, Thrifty. So this is a grading system that investment companies use. And the higher the grading system, the more money you get from investments. So for
Okay.
example, one of
War is
EA's
saying ESG. I don't know.
ESG, equity, I don't know. War will probably know. But to give you an example, EA, their number one and number two investor is BlackRock. And
Mm,
there are between 7 and 12 trillion dollar investment group.
yeah.
They have money in absolutely everything. So the reason that these
Terrify them
games,
and tell them their games or their things will not sell unless they put this stuff in there. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
and the reason they hiring this company is because they want to get that grade high. So somebody like BlackRock would say, "Hey, you guys have a high ESG rating. We're going to invest money in your firm or your developer, your studio." That's the real purpose of why they're doing this. Sure, inclusivity and all these other things may be, what do you call that, a side effect of the situation,
But
but the
it's
real reason,
it's not the root reason. They're not
it's
trying to
not the real
stand
reason.
with partners and stand with people who are
Yes,
in these ethnic groups who are in these uh, not ethnic groups. That's the wrong word. In these special interest groups
special
uh,
interest.
that covers everything. Uh, but like they're not really doing it. They're doing it. Okay, so the biggest problem I have with it is
What's it
that they're
called?
doing it.
Peacocking or
It,
grandstanding? Is
I
that the
think it's
word?
called grandstanding. I think peacocking and grandstanding are like the same thing. I
Okay.
think. I don't know. Shit, box make picture. What the fuck?
Yeah,
Like I don't.
we work, we work for a living, dude. Like we.
Listen, we just lost David. David Faulkner is no longer here. Okay, y'all are stuck with us
Yeah.
for the rest of the fucking show. Okay, this is what you get. So, the, yeah,
Josh said it's the
Josh,
same
that
thing,
they're the
so it's
same
the same
thing.
thing.
It's the same fucking thing. My producer said it's the same thing. It's the same damn thing.
It's the same thing.
But like that's the part that pisses me off. So, and I get pissed off at people on both sides of this. If you're going to boycott Girl Scout cookies because they support the LGBTQIA, then for God's sake, take everything else out of your house that's made by a company that supports LGBTQIA and then tell me where you're going to sit, what TV you're going to watch, what car you're going to drive, what trampoline you're going to let your kids play on,
Hmm.
what Nintendo Switch that you're going to buy for them. Please fucking tell
Yeah.
me because it's not there. So if
Yep.
you're going to go a little, so fun fact, so this is not the podcast, but it's on my mind right now. When in the Bible where it tells us to basically, if you're going to try to keep the law, go the entire way. So if you're going to talk about, and they're talking about circumcision at the time, and it's kind of a play on words that is being used right there, basically saying, hey, if you're worried so much about this thing that if they're circumcised or if they're not, did you go the whole way? In other words, did you cut your junk off completely? It's the
Hmm.
same thing. If you're so freaking worried about this, just go the whole damn way and give us good stories. We didn't, dude, I swear to God, I cannot deal with the fact that these studios whitewash, blackwash, brown wash, beige wash characters. It drives me absolutely freaking insane. And it's not because I don't want to see a actor who was or a comic book character who was actually white in the comic books portrayed as a black guy. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. Because I think Nick Fury will always and forever be Samuel L. Jackson,
Facts.
even though Nick Fury was actually white in the
White
comics.
dude. Yep.
Up until Samuel L. Jackson became Nick Fury has always been white.
But Thrifty, why did it work? Because the story was awesome, the actor was awesome, everything they built in that universe and around it was
And
awesome.
and there was never a moment in the movie where he's being introduced and somebody looks and goes, "Huh, I thought you were white." They
Yep.
never brought attention to it. It just was. And So instead, what you have are companies going, okay, well, now this person's going to be black, this person has to be Asian, this person has to be light brown Hispanic. And you're sitting there going, now wait, hang on. How is that? How? Well, because it needs to be that way. But but Superman has always been a white dude, except for some of the other iterations from other planets. But even they had different names and different backstories, almost like a Miles Morales type thing.
Yep.
And so, like, what are you actually saying? You're actually saying that your writers suck so bad that they can't give us a good character with a good origin, and you have to do this with other properties. And then you have companies like this coming in and saying, hey, listen, if you want the money from these people, you're gonna have to come with us. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
do this. You're gonna have to get this number up.
Yep.
But the problem is special interest groups are called that for a reason. It's
Hmm.
because it is outside of the normal, not normal, but outside of just what is typical and standard. Usually it means that people within those special interest groups make up a very small percentage of the world's population. And
Yep.
I'm not getting into a political argument here. I'm just giving you facts. I'm not giving one side or the other. I think that I have actually played games and enjoyed games where there have been LGBTQIA characters or African American characters
Last
or
of Us
Hispanic.
Part One.
It doesn't fucking matter because the stories were good. Because it wasn't shoved in your face as some kind of, hey, look at us, look what we did.
Hmm.
Like, it's that's the frustrating part. And then you start doing a deep dive in this shit because here's the deal: if it gets to the quartering, it's starting to affect the movie, or it has to affect the movie industry. He doesn't cover video
Well,
games as much anymore.
Thrifty, it did. Look at Disney's stock right now.
That's what I was gonna say.
It
Yep,
is on the floor.
yep,
And before I let Thrifty continue, because he's on fire right now, he's cooking. One thing I want to say too is for the people that say something like well, my discussion with Broken Games is, well, they don't have to do it, right? The CEO herself basically put out a manifesto on what to do if a company rejects your service. And you know what that was? Cancel them. Let's
yep.
tell people why they're so terrible that they don't want to choose our product. So a company may go in there and saying, okay, we got to get funding up. We got to do this. Let's go in there. And then once they get the story from these guys, the corrections, quote unquote, and like, no way, we're not doing that shit. Well, now we have a blackmail here saying, well, if you don't do this, we're going to cancel you. And online, guys, the truth doesn't matter. It's what comes out first. And we've seen it over and over and over again on all aspects of society, on all, that's another, oh man, it's hard not to get
So,
into the other stuff because,
but
go ahead, Thrifty, I'm sorry.
they literally are. So, Cosmic just put Nick and what's up, Nick? What's up, Cosmic? Uh, they both just put some good stuff. One said that they're bullying, and then the
Yeah,
other one said that they are crying like, or yeah, they cry like little babies. Like, yeah. So that was another quote from Black Rock, Black Cock, whatever the hell it is. That's another one from there, and it is one of the. It's one of the things that really irritates me about sitting down to play a video game from a studio or a publisher that I don't know. I am so frustrated that I can't let my son play Spider-Man 2. And I'm not even kidding. He hasn't played it. He's watched me play it when I knew that there wasn't a scene coming up. Like I would play a chapter and then sometimes I would go back and replay that chapter like before they went to bed so they could watch what I was playing because I knew the next chapter had one of the scenes from Brooklyn Visions Academy and I'm like, "Man, I don't they're 10. I don't need them to see that in a fucking game. I just don't."
mm-hmm.
It's not anything else, but it's how you decide to raise your family. If you're okay with it, then fine. I don't like putting I don't like putting that in front of somebody who has a non-developed frontal lobe. Like I'm just being serious. Their brains aren't developed. Everything they're taking in right now has the potential to affect them longer, especially if you look at science and psychology and the way that works. That's why
Those
they
are
always.
naughty words. You don't say science.
I know. The Christian guy talking about science. I know. It's like they work hand in hand with the scripture.
Yeah,
Anyways,
almost, but
almost. So here's the thing. Let's do this real quick. It's about forcing the crap. Most of the character Hero said most of the characters I love are white, which is really funny because most of the characters I love are actually black. And that comes from the fact that my favorite actors are Denzel Washington,
oh, I love
Morgan
Denzel,
Freeman.
dude.
Like they're black dudes. Those are my two favorite actors. I could listen to Morgan Freeman read me the telephone book and I'd be happy. Like his delivery and his cadence is awesome. My favorite comedians are all black. That's why I can't say
Yeah,
most of their jokes. Like my favorite musicians are all black with the exception of two. One's Knox Hill, who has his own YouTube channel and is a rapper, independent artist. Go check him out. And the other one, also, dude does technical breakdowns on raps like I've never seen before. Dude is a freaking wizard. Uh, and then the second is Eminem. Outside of that, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Biggie, Nelly, Bone Thugs and Harmony. Like, and not in that
damn,
order.
50, you're old.
I am old. I am old. I'll throw one better. Puff Daddy and Mace on
Sheesh.
the Notorious B.I.G. Tribute album.
That's when Bad Boy was really doing something.
That's when Bad Boy was Bad Boy. DMX, like that's my. I joke, but like Bone Thugs and Harmony kind of like was my preteen childhood. It really was. I had the tape of Crossroads hidden under my mattress, right next to Snoop Doggy Dogg's The Dog Pound, right next to it on CD that was my brother's, and we hid him under there. And like that is so when people talk about all this stuff, I'm like, this hasn't been a problem until we have decided to make it a problem.
Mhm.
And that's the frustrating thing because the numbers for certain sectors of special interest groups hasn't risen above 3%. But we're made to believe that that's the majority of the population.
Yeah.
Most people of different shades don't give a flying rat's ass what color the character is that they're playing.
Nope.
Now, I will say this, when they were able to get African American hair in video games to look just like it does in real life, I can fully understand how that is a big deal for a
Yeah.
12-year-old black kid with dreadlocks that his mom just did or that his barber just did, going into a game, creating a character, and being able to look just like him. That's fucking awesome. And I love that. Like when they did the all the different hairstyles and textures that were in Horizon Zero Dawn, or sorry, Horizon Forbidden West, that stuff is super fucking cool. That is an awesome way to say, guys, we've really worked on this. We know it's a big sector in gaming that because of the way the hairstyles are and the way the hair is, it hasn't been graphically possible to do this, and now it is. And so
Yep.
that's freaking awesome because back in the day, all you had the afro, you had the high top fade, the low top fade, and bald. And
That's
those were
it.
your choices if
And a
you
lot of
were
times it was just like blonde or black hair. Like that's all. Those were your
right.
only options.
And so seeing stuff like that is freaking awesome.
And
Watching
speaking from experience, like Spider-Man, like Miles Morales, like when I first found out about Miles Morales back in like mid 2000 in the 2010, right? 2012, 13, 14, 15, somewhere out there. I thought, oh, Miles is cool. Oh, he's Puerto Rican. I'm Puerto Rican. That's cool. Okay, what can he do? I like that it was a cool little thing for a second, but it's like I want to see what Miles can do. Same thing with the game. What can Miles do? Like, yeah, okay, he's Puerto Rican, whatever, but what can you do? Are you as cool as Peter? What powers do you have? How? how good can you kick ass? Those were the things that were important to me. But
and
then like, oh, he's Puerto Rican. Oh, okay, all right, that's
and
fine.
Miles is a badass character
Dude, for
written in
Spider-Man
such a
2,
way that he's
I kept
fantastic.
going back and forth on who I preferred. I went in there preferring Peter, and then I stayed with Peter, and then Miles got his the that other power, and I was like, oh shit, I might like Miles better. But that was the whole discussion with Spider-Man 2. It's like I'm going back and forth between Miles and Peter, not
You were
because of
12.
race or anything. It was because of what they were doing and how they can do it and the story and how relatable it was. Not the superhero part, but we've all dealt with heartbreak. We all had to dealt with some sort of sacrifice in our life, and Spider-Man is what was a great, thing because of it. But then you start to add all the other shit, and it's like distracting from the game, distracting from the story. And these entities that don't give a shit about gaming. It's my same problem that I have with these CEOs and these investors. They do not give a shit about gaming. They're just looking, and the same problem I have with these YouTubers and influencers. They do not give a shit about the gaming medium whatsoever. The only extent of their care is how much they can profit from it, whether by views, by clicks, or straight up money. That's all they care about it. So my whole discussion with the physical shit, with the physical games, we as gamers have to really put our money where our mouth is. We need to support physical. We need to support developers who make the games that we care about, the stories that we care about, and really leave these other games behind. If they're not benefiting us, they're not giving us what we want, let's stick our money into places that do.
And here's the thing: these type of firms and these type of almost not almost, but these type of like bully tactics, all they've done is destroy some very popular franchises. That's all it's done. Like Disney is in the tank, but they've been in the tank for a while because nobody wants to watch their fucking movies anymore. I don't have Disney Plus at my house anymore, not because they raised the price, because I guarantee you I watch the hell out of Disney Plus because all of my favorite shows from when I was a kid are on there. Like I can go in there and I can nostalgia's a hell of a drug. And if you're having a
Yes,
rough day, I've loved nothing more than
and
going on
Thrifty,
there and watching
I
like hang
wanna.
give me a sec. I, the like watching Brink or watching Alley Cat Strike, some of those old Disney Channel original movies, or Luck of the Irish, they just make me happy because they're good things. Sorry, go ahead, Will.
I just want to say I want 5 minutes to talk about nostalgia and Final Fantasy
Okay.
at the end.
Ooh, I want your take on that. That's actually, yeah, we'll do that at the end because I want your take on that because you don't have a nostalgia factor to it. And
Nope.
so I want to see kind of what you think because honestly, even with where I'm at in the game, there's not a whole lot of stuff that I've seen so far outside of the intro in Nibelheim, which was in the demo, and a couple of the things in Junon, which was also in the demo. There's not just a ton of overtly, hey, this is here for fan service. But, anyways, there is stuff in it. I think they did it really well. But you have these. Uh, anyway, I got rid of Disney Plus because there were so many kids' cartoons that were coming. One of them had the freaking like had the flag for like the minor attracted persons. Pedophiles.
Sheesh.
And it was on one of the it was a it was a same-sex couple, which okay, cool, fine. Let's see what they do with it. And then they put one of the dads uh, in that shirt, and I'm like, fucking no. Like, you can't just stop at a little bit. You have to go all the way with it or none at all. And I know so many people who have said, listen, I'm not doing this. Yeah, Wara, I did. When people start championing touching little kids for pleasure, yeah, I get a little fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my line to where inclusion no longer becomes okay.
Nope.
Like it's already not okay to shove your ideas down other people's throats. Like, but at the same time, I can tolerate a lot of crap. But when you start messing with children, I am completely 100% out.
No way.
It's reasons like that that I was never allowed when GTA 3 came out and they had the strip clubs in it. My dad found out about them because he read my Game Informers and he was like, "Yeah, you're not buying that. You're not playing that." It's because I was a freaking kid. And he did what a good dad is supposed to do and look at you and go, "Hey, listen, I have standards for the house and we're going to be at those standards here." And maybe the standards at your house are different and that's fine, but you still have a line. You still, and I'm talking to you, Will, and I'm talking to the chat, like there is still a line, especially if you're a parent,
Yep.
of what is allowed in my house and what isn't. That's why I loved the movie Top Gun, Maverick, because the
Good movie.
worst thing that it had in that was the scene where Tom Cruise and whoever the female character is, she doesn't matter, but they're in her bed after having a date. They do the old school like fade to black thing, but nothing ever happened. Because when they fade back in, they're still pretty much fully clothed. And like stuff like that where you can be artistic with it and creative with it, fine. I've never told my kids, "Hey, close your eyes during this," or "Hey, close your ears," or what. I've never done that when watching Top Gun Maverick because I don't have to. Because they told a great story in a tasteful way and it was just entertainment. And so this is something I almost made a fucking video about this today because I was just pissed. And that's Will earlier you were like Thrifty's cooking. It's because I'm fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's it's one of those things that really freaking bothers like I was watching something and they were showing different female leads over the past few years from gaming. Almost every single fucking one of them was overly muscular, had short butch style haircuts, and didn't look that pretty in the face. And
And
I'm
most of
like,
them were worked
man,
on by the company we're talking about.
right. Or at least had the green light and input to say,
Yep.
yes, no, y'all did a good job.
Yep.
Like that. So, and I was talking to my wife about this before the stream because even she, who doesn't do anything with gaming, knows about Sweet Baby Inc. and knows about what's going
God,
on in that.
such a disgusting name.
It really is. But it's bleeding over and people are starting to realize, she goes, it's almost like people are starting to realize what companies own all these other smaller companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, honey, that veil has been pulled back for the past like 4 or 5 years in gaming where we can go, okay, so Embracer actually owns this, this, and this. This studio is a subsidiary of this one, but everything is still, and like we make those connections because it's been like peeled back, like, oh yeah, here's all the studios that are owned by these companies. And that information is more readily accessible now. And so it's, oh man, I'm coming back down from being pissed, so my train of thought is leaving a little bit, but like, damn it. I am so tired. The biggest thing, and I'll just be honest, and I've said it before when I was on Salty's podcast, the biggest thing is that I come to video games to get away from the political bullshit that is in the Western world. God love you, my frickin' Australians. I love that y'all don't have to deal with this shit. I love that it's not really even a thing for y'all. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Twisted Sin, that is a good question. I don't know. I would love to
What
sit
was
here
this
and say
question?
yes, but here's my thought on boycotting, okay? Here's my thought on boycotting. People are pushing back against things like you cannot do. Yeah, okay. I'm not finishing that. Uh, Twisted Sin asked if I was going to be boycotting
Oh, okay.
games by Sweet Baby or that have their consulting on it or other companies like them. And this feeds into what I had said earlier. if you're going to boycott one company, then you need to be consistent and boycott them all. And then at that point, I can't put clothes on my back. And
I mean, you
so,
can. You just have to make it yourself, and
well, then where
you
are you going to
know,
get? Hang on, no, no, no. Where are you going to get the fabric from?
well,
Walmart?
you no, you get it from somebody who's reputable.
Uh,
And look, and there's a lot of look at the what's his name who made the composer for Halo. He is now running for office. He was one of the guys that worked on Halo on the music. He is now running for office because he's had enough of shit like this and he wants to make a difference. And there's a lot of people that are like-minded individuals that
Mm.
offer services. There's even a phone company that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like that stuff and decided to do their own. So there's options out there, and that's the great thing about capitalism is that our money, and that's why I'm a big component of put your money where your mouth is, because like for me, for example, I don't watch the NFL anymore. Baseball, my favorite sport, I don't watch it anymore. I stopped buying a lot of like fountain drinks from certain companies. So I'm slowly my stances are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So to answer your question, Twisted, will I boycott a game from Sony that has been worked on by I
That
rebuked their
company.
name. Um I don't consider it boycotting because I'm not like making um I'm not being like them where I'm peacocking. I'm just not gonna buy it. I'm just not gonna buy it. And honestly, if I would have known about Spider-Man what I know now, I probably wouldn't have bought it either. And I feel silly a little bit because I got the collector's edition. So I really
Mm-hmm.
gave them extra money for it. But hey, lesson learned, right? There's no way I could have known, especially with video games, because they're way more secretive about their story because they have to be, right? I mean, you're playing these games for numerous hours, tens upon tens of hours. So of course they're going to be more secretive. But if I know something from the get go, yes, I will not buy the game. I will not grandstand. I will not peacock. I will just silently not buy the game, which is what a lot of people do. I also don't have Disney Plus. Everything Thrifty talked about was like 70% of the decision of why I don't have it. The other 30% is because the shows that I love, like Star Wars, and Marvel, they're complete trash. And some of it has to do with the way they're written because of this issue that we're talking about. But a lot of it is just shitty fucking writers. And was it last year, Thrifty, when the Hollywood had that big writer strike?
Yeah,
Was it
it, it
2020?
it actually affected. It was the Actors Guild, and it affected a lot of the voice actors too for video games.
Yes. So I was watching. Oh man, I really wish I can remember the name and all the info because it was a great interview. But it was the interview was for an OG writer in Hollywood, and he's having a great time with the strike, right? Because he's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 some years. I was smart with my money, and I'm basically on vacation. It gives me time to work on ideas and really get down to it, right? So he's having a great time. But the thing that interests me about the interview is, which I really, really love, is he said this strike is actually really good for the industry. It may not seem like it right now, but it really is. Because what is happening is a lot of these people who think like this, right? They their true colors are coming out in regards to skill, right? Because for you guys that don't know, the main reason why they strike is because of pay disparity, right? Because now with streaming, the amount of money they would make and how they make their money is way different. They're still getting
Hmm.
paid in the old school style, how shows used to be run and seasons and
Yep.
all that. And now with the way the digital market is, it's not like that at all. So, for example, which is a problem we're actually seeing in the video game industry as well, right? We saw online last week with the layoffs of PlayStation that Spider-Man 2 had like 20 something writers, where Spider-Man 2018 had like two or three. So they've ballooned in
It's so much
employees.
fucking redundancy on that, man.
Yeah, so much redundancy, right? So it applies to this as well because what happened with what the guy was saying is so now these studio heads are gonna give them the money they want, but instead of hiring 100 people, they're only going to hire 20 because that's the money they can afford to pay them. And the 20 that are going to stick around are going to be people like me, people that have been doing this for 20 some years, or people that are really good at what they do. They're not motivated by anything except for writing a good story, for writing a good product. So I think the tide is turning a little bit, and we need to keep going with the exposure. And we all got to do it. I mean, we see it with the movie buffs, right? With their YouTube channels, with the movie journalists. Well, I shouldn't say the journalists, but you know what I mean. We're seeing it on the gamer side now. I think the gamer side is actually hit way later than I've seen in other industries.
It
The
did.
sports, the movies, NASCAR, all the other stuff. It went through that first, and now we're seeing it more. But this
But I
is
think, go ahead.
I mean, we were aware of it, right? Because we see it bounced off of all these things, but it really hasn't been blown up to a level that it has like it is right now.
So I think, going back to how I started this, I think that given what you said, well, I'm going to piggyback off of that and wrap this back around to the beginning of when I opened this little topic. I think we're in the stage of a pivot now, and by that, here's what I mean. With my, this is going to sound like, follow me here, guys. Okay, Josh, hold up typing for just a minute. Okay, because I'm gonna say something and people are gonna be like, "What?" With Microsoft backing out of consoles. Financial Times, go read the fucking article. I didn't write it. With Microsoft having all signs of pointing to getting out of being a major or trying to be a major console player. That's a big arm in the West gone. Third party publisher now. Okay? And I know they're not there yet. For God's sake, if somebody clips me, at least clip this part right here.
Wait, who? Who are you talking about?
Microsoft.
Oh, yes.
If
Okay.
Microsoft gets out of the gaming industry, in the console space at least, uh, I think with that combined with Sony being more laser focused on giving good games, with the Switch 2 coming out, and the Switch not really allowing games like that anyways on their
Yep.
platforms, along with Japan and Korean studios and your
Holding the
India
line.
and your India hero projects, studios are coming out and going, why wouldn't we want our character to be gorgeous? People
Yeah.
like looking at gorgeous people. I told my wife
Yeah.
that tonight when we were talking about this before the show. I told her, I was like, honey, it's a fact that people like playing as pretty people. We do. Whether it's a
Absolutely.
dude that's 6'4" and jacked and just that every man like in Bulletstorm,
Yep.
or if it's Stellar Blade coming out with this beautiful woman
Mm-hmm.
who you get to control, or you have a blonde hair, green eyed main character in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth who's freaking chiseled. Like, that's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
We want those type of things. And there's this pivot happening in the industry where folks are like, where devs are coming out and going, yeah, we're not doing this bullshit anymore. Our games, we've watched other studios' games suffer because creative has been hindered. We've saw them suffer because of this or that. We're not doing it. We are going to make good stories. One of the best implementations of a openly gay character in a uh, in a game was Dion from Final Fantasy 16. That
Oh
character,
yeah.
he is
Dion.
he is probably my favorite side
Yep.
character that isn't part of the fighting team. Okay, my favorite of the
Dion was
fighting
my
team is Jill.
dude. Dion was actually like my top three favorite characters in that game.
He's fantastic.
He's a beast.
And the way they wrote him was freaking amazing.
Yep.
With him being in love with the captain of the guard and them both having that, like, but not ever expressing it until almost, like, it's such a good story.
Yeah, it's a classic like forbidden love kind of story.
Right. And it's just so, it was really good.
Well written.
And it was well written. Stellar Blade. You know what? I say it every time, and nobody believes me. When I saw the first trailer and it had all that damn combat in it, I didn't give a rat's ass about the way she looked. I loved the particle effects, the slashing effects, the way the combat looked, how fluid it looked, the cinematic presentation of it. It was gorgeous. And then everyone, like that week on Salty's show, everyone was like, Stellar Yam, Stellar. And I'm like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Like, what are you, what? I was like, the game is Stellar Blade. And then he put the picture up while we were talking, and I was like, oh, got
Way to
it.
be an old
Okay.
man, Thrifty.
Bro, I'm literally sometimes stuff like that passes right over my head when it comes to games because I see it as a character on a screen that I get to control. And so like yeah, I can look at and Wara's probably gonna go, well, didn't you just mention Tifa's boobs are bigger in this one? Yes,
Dude, Tifa's
because
so hot.
they look bigger in Rebirth, and they actually are. They took away the reduction that they gave her in 7 remake.
I don't care that she's a video game character. Tifa can get it.
Well, sure. Smash or pass? Definitely smash. Uh,
Mary,
like,
I mean,
no, Aerith is the one you marry. Tifa's the one you have fun with.
I don't know.
It's yeah.
Okay, Tifa's not like a bad girl either. Like she's
No,
not.
she's
It's not like they're.
not.
She's actually very sweet, and
But which one's gonna get approved by mom? Tifa or Aerith? Come on,
both. Dude,
cut
if I
my
brought
ass.
anything close to Tifa home, my mom would be like, "What planet did she come from?" Like
My
so
mom would tell her to put
respectful.
on more clothes.
Well, besides that part, yeah, like here's my double X jacket, of course that part, but yeah, no. But that's personality wise, they're both very
Sure.
respectable young women.
Yes. Yes. Both very well written. Oh, one of the other things that Square Enix actually did that nobody else has freaking picked up on, and I haven't seen the big, huge outrage on the other side of it. So, Yuffie is actually not, she's under 18. And so, like, in the original game, in her art, her top button of her shorts was always open. It just was. You couldn't see anything, nothing like that, but it was always open. Well, they caught a little bit of crap for that in intermission because, like, guys, she's underage. That's not cool. Like,
What up, Willie?
and so, dude, did you say Wooly?
Yeah, he's in the chat.
Ah, I figure he'd be asleep by now. He must have just got off of Helldivers.
Probably.
So what they did in Rebirth, it's buttoned. Something that nobody is going to give them praise for. Nobody's going to say, "Hey, good job for paying attention to that this time." Good job. Like, because to me, that's the type of stuff we need to be looking at. Like, hey, that video game character is a little underage. Like, you can't do that.
Well, you
Or,
have to also admit that in Japan, the age of consent is 16. So I mean, there's cultural things that go into it as well. But they
well,
did do
sure,
the right thing. Absolutely,
but it's
yes.
like the people who have a. I was listening to. There's a streamer out there. His nickname is Hatcher. Go watch him. He's funny as hell. Not safe for work at all. But he was talking about how these body pillows of their like favorite anime characters is like a thing, and people like sleeping with them to feel like they're next to their anime counter care whatever. Weird already, but that's not the bad part. I don't give a damn if you want to have a freaking body pillow with Goku's face on it. I don't give a shit. But the problem comes in is you can get any character you want made into a body pillow, which also includes the underage anime characters.
Mm,
Or my favorite, the characters who are 9 million years old but look and talk like they're 8 that grown ass people are sleeping next to in their bed.
yeah.
That is where it's never the first cut. It's never the first, hey, we're going to put this in. It's the, hey, we're going to put this in and then we're going to take it to the millionth degree and fuck it all up. Something that could have been really, really cool. And we're going to screw it all up because we want to be inclusive. We want to be amazing. We want to do all these things and cater to every people group. That's not how this is gonna sound bad. I'm gonna get clipped for this, guys. I love y'all. I just want y'all to know that I'm about to get clipped. I might get canceled.
Dude, people think like how
It's
what we're saying. There's a
I,
reason, there's traction in this shit. And we're not trying to be offensive to anybody. We're just
I'm
trying to
not.
speak what we like and what we think is right. And we all have different opinions, and that's okay. And we encourage that discussion. If you don't agree with us, please say so. Let's talk about it because that's how we get better as gamers, as dads and moms, as employees, as everything is discussion. The problem that we have, and I think everybody has this problem, is forcing yourself on us, whether it's opinions or physically or anything. Anything of force is no good. The only time there should be any type of force is to save a life. And we're not even there. So please speak up. A lot of us, this has to be said. We've all been walking on eggshells for how many years? We've all have deleted a comment because we're like, oh, well, I don't want somebody to take offense to it. And
Or
it's not because we don't want to offend somebody. It's because we don't want to get canceled. We don't want to
yeah,
get doxxed.
we
We don't
don't
want
want
to
the
get our
clap back from
employers
people
called on.
who are trying to sit there and say, "Oh, I can't believe you said that. Did you mean this?" No, you fucktard. I didn't mean
No,
that. Why are you putting that in there? So I say, if I sit there, a white American Christian male, if I sit there and say, "Man, I really wish they wouldn't try to blackwash Superman in the next Superman movie," I'm a jackass and a racist. That's not true. I want them to give me another fucking Static Shock. You already have a damn good character. You already have one. His
yeah.
name is Static Shock. It's a fucking
Or
amazing
create
character.
a new one.
Or
Perfect
create a new one.
opportunity to create a new one.
Everybody, all these devs say we can't be creative. We can't be creative. We can't be creative. Well, say F it, like Arrowhead or like Arrowhead is actually a great example because they're on the non-political side of the spectrum. They have a game that is so freaking over the top, so nuts. There's language in it. There's big huge you're killing everything. So much violence, so over the top, and they're unapologetic for it because it's good. Then you have other games or Shift Up doing Stellar Blade going, no, we are the studio, we're the developers. We want to play as a pretty person, but those type of people don't actually exist. Motherfucker, here she is. It's
And
like,
like Wooly said, yeah, you're right. Like Wooly said, and you just said right now, it's realistic. It's a real freaking person, and oh man, there's just and by the way, Thrifty, with the Arrowhead Helldivers 2, you're 99% accurate. There has been clowns out there comparing the bugs to a certain group of people from a certain country that's at war right now. It is insane how their
oh
mind
my god.
automatically goes to bullshit like that. Instead of just saying, oh, it's just like making fun of that freedom and liberty and, just being bombastic with it, they automatically want to include things from real life that nobody's even thinking about. Like, we're just having a great time. As a matter of fact, the game is really based off of Starship Troopers and not even the movie. If you actually read the books, there's way more in there, topic wise, that I can just go on about that. But it's just the silliness about it all. It's the immaturity about it all. And I stand firm on this, and I am open to debate anybody about this. The thing that they accuse people of is what they themselves are. I think they
Correct.
are the biggest projectionists on the face of the planet. Anybody who attacks anybody for what they believe in or think or say, they are the ones who really feel that way, because only a person who says the most idiotic things like that, only they can come up with that shit. What's that saying? It looks so real that it's fake, or it's so stupid that it must be true. Like, that's their type of
Yeah.
thinking. It's
Like
just
I can't
insane.
make that's so crazy. I can't make this shit up. Like
Yeah, that's a saying. I'm sorry. I'm going like a million different ways. Thank you.
no, and it's the thing that it bleeds in to literally everything now. And gaming was the one last like I know I'm just gonna get a great story. So like with I mentioned Top Gun Maverick earlier. it had the same themes of democracy, liberty, freedom, fighting against a collective bad guy. Okay, it had all of that, and and if you look at the cast of it, the main cast, the main pilots, was super diverse. You had a female pilot, which is interesting to say the least. There's not many of them in the military, fighter pilots that are. You have you had black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Uh, you had all of it, and it was one of the best movies of the year last year when it came out. I think it was last year. And so everybody in Hollywood was like, I don't know how this is.
Yeah.
All the critic channels were like, this movie's fucking amazing. I don't know how, because literally it fucking reprogrammed their brain for a second to go, oh, this movie succeeded because it had a damn good story, good acting, and good cinematography work.
Well, isn't
Like
that kind of
they,
like the rule of thumb? Whatever Rotten
but
Tomatoes the critics say is the opposite with the viewers.
damn near truth. But like that movie, they did all the stuff right. There are games that still do all of the things right. So, Byron, you're saying bring Wooly on the show. For God's sakes, I talk to that dude probably once every other week, and I try, but his schedule is not viable for this time slot. Um, we actually had a few games that him and I were supposed to be playing together that it's never going to happen. It's just not, because I need to be able to play them like Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And so I love Wooly to death. He's a wonderful person. He actually helped me a lot when Church Keys passed away. And so, no, much love to Wooly. So happy he's back in the gaming sector and in the gaming world. Let me rephrase that. So happy he's in the gaming social media world again. He's still been gaming.
Oh yeah, he's
Like,
always gaming, dude.
but like, so how effed up is it when Hollywood 1 minute of the movie is 18? Yeah, yeah. And that's the, it's not hard. And I'm happy that the industry is pivoting. I feel like it's coming, and I feel like Japan once again is
Leading
going
the
to
charge.
save the fucking gaming industry. I really do. Like, and of course, just like with everything else, it's going to take the Western world a little bit to catch up with them. Think about it. Anime. I started watching Dragon Ball Z in like 97, 98. That's a TV show that was in Japan in the late 80s. Like, it takes us a minute to catch up to good shit. It just does. We're a little slow over here. We're a little stubborn. We're a little hard-headed. But the thing is that it's working. And I think what Will constantly preaches about voting with your wallet is the best thing that you can do. Why is Disney having to, why is Kevin Feige at Disney having to come out and go, hey guys, listen, we know we fucked up. We did too much too fast. We changed too many stories. We had some of the wrong people in place. We're going to slow down. We're going to go back to just making great stories. And that's going to be our focus going forward. That's why we're not getting that many Marvel movies this year, because they're literally having to sit there and go, okay, unless it's already done, we're not sending it out yet. Like, and so the last one we got was Captain Marvel, or the Marvels, which I won't watch. I haven't watched. I don't want to watch. I don't care, because I have lost so much support in a series that I have literally seen every movie up to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, me too, dude.
I
Me
stopped
too.
after that. Thor almost had me to stop.
Oh,
And
no,
then,
you're right. I watched Thor: Love and Thunder.
was Thor Love and Thunder after Ant-Man and the Wasp? Or
It
was it
was around the
before?
same time.
One of
I don't
those two was
remember.
the last Marvel movie I've actually watched.
Oh no, it was Thor: Love and Thunder, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Outside of that, another movie that I absolutely love watching, when I've seen it once, and it's because the movie is a lot to take in. It's Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's
Never seen that.
oh my god. It's by A23 or A24.
The same
Such
production company that Kojima is doing his movie through.
if it's A24, then yes.
Pretty sure it is. They're real hot right now because of the aesthetics of their movies. They're very like colorful and like kind of trippy, and
And they're
they're
also very low
they're coming
budget.
up. Yes, they're indie studio basically, or
Yes,
indie
and
publishing company.
they are hitting it out of the park because oh, and fun fact, in that movie, one of the main characters is lesbian. And I fucking love the movie. It's so good. So that's where people can miss me where the with the oh you hate this people group or you hate that. I don't give a flying rat's ass what you do in your house. I
Oh,
really
hey,
don't.
secret guys. I actually have a family member who is trans. He was born a male and he transitioned to female. And he also, or I'm sorry, she also loves video games. And guess what? He thinks just the way that we think. The same shit we're talking about, he's also saying. The
That's
first thing he told
because
me about Spider-Man is, why are they having kids doing this stuff in high school? I was like,
mhm,
I don't know. You tell me, bro. These are your people.
these
But
these
I see him every Sunday night for dinner. We have a family little dinner every Sunday night. That's why you never see me gaming between the times of 3 and like 5 Central Standard Time. And that's how we bond is talking about gaming.
yep.
Unfortunately, his work schedule is second shift, plays the full time student because he's trying to be a nurse, so he's very busy right now. He's in his early 20s, so he's trying to build his career up. Where I'm past that, right? But he thinks the same exact way. He doesn't make it a priority. It's not his personality. It's just a part of what he is. And for the judgmental fucks out there too, right? Because I don't approve of the lifestyle, but let's not act like what they're doing is way worse than a thief's or
Right.
somebody committing some other shit, right? It's all about your line that Thrifty talked about. And you leave my stories alone. You make good
Yep.
stories. You make good video games. I will support it. I will be there day one. I will buy the merchandise. I will buy the extra controller. I would buy the fuck. I just donated $5 to get what's that thing called, Thrifty?
It's
The
the
bangle.
Shinra, yeah, it's the Shinra
Uh,
Bangle MK2, which by the way took
that.
me forever to figure out how to get that damn thing from the download screen into the game. You have to use like a little back channel that I've never even knew was a thing. Like
Well,
cuz it's not showing up for some people. And so you actually have to go to the game tile on the PS5, on the home screen of the PS5, go to the game tile, press the start button, go over to manage content, and I had two downloadable items that didn't ever make it into the game because you actually have to go in there and tell it to download the damn thing.
mm,
And so
See,
I
Square
was like,
Enix can never make anything easy, or maybe I don't know. Maybe it wasn't Square Enix. Maybe it was a charity company. But
no, I'm
yeah,
gonna blame
I love.
PlayStation.
Yeah, we'll do two that too. Of course, all three of them. But yeah, the charity I donated $5. They gave me this little DLC thing, and I'm like, I like um Final Fantasy. That's why I did it, and also it's for a good
Wait,
cause.
whoa, wait. Josh, clip that shit. What did you just say, sir?
I said I like Final Fantasy. I didn't say which
Ooh,
one. It could have been 16. It could have been Rebirth.
I
It
don't give a
definitely and
shit.
sure wasn't 7
I don't
remake.
give a
I'll tell
shit.
you that.
Yeah, and
But
here's the deal. All the complaints you have for that, it was I was watching you and Josh go back and forth, and I kind of chimed in a bit on X, but like all the complaints you're talking about are fixed in this one. Like
oh yeah.
there's Josh and I pretty much have it figured out. There's going to be a big open world section and a linear section, and a big open world section
Oh,
and a linear section, and a
I'm
big
glad you
open.
brought that up
And
because
so, yeah, let's get into that. So, Final Fantasy
yes.
VII Rebirth, I have 21 hours in it. I have completed
Hmm.
Junon and the Grasslands, 100%ed both of them. Uh, Not platinuming sense, but like as in completion map sense. Completed all the world events, completed all the side quests, all the matches, and everything. I am absolutely in love with the way this game looks. People who sit there and go, "Well, 60 frames looks blurry." Fuck off. It I took two photos and I put them in the Discord, and after looking at them, people were like, "Yeah, I can tell it's this one." That I can tell it's this one. Yeah, how did you do that? You probably had to do what I had to do and zoom in on Aerith's arm and notice a little bit of blocky or a little bit of fuzz around the arm that wasn't hair. Outside of that, the game is absolutely perfect. It has some of the most beautiful landscapes I have seen in a game. So here's my advice, because you don't have to restart the game or reload the save file to swap from performance to graphics. What I have started doing is in the open world, I play it on graphics my first time in it, and like the introduction, like you go to a new place, they do the cutscene, they do some of the in-game cinematics, and even some of the CGI. I keep it all at quality there, all at quality. But when I'm going around and I'm exploring everything and I'm doing all that stuff, I have it at 60.
Wait, what
And
is Josh saying? It's the same thing. Josh said, what does he mean by that? He said, remake
let's
what's
see.
the same. What is he talking about there when he
Okay,
says
so
remake what's the same?
Will, consider yourself blessed and lucky because you got to play remake after it was fixed. When it, and I say fixed in air quotes, y'all can't see that, but just like Faulkie, I just did air quotes. It's basically what had, oh, the download thing. Okay, I thought he was talking about, so apparently some of the downloadable content for Final Fantasy VII Remake, you had to do the same thing that I had to do on this one for Rebirth.
Mm,
Gotcha.
for that
I thought he was
thingy.
going into how the textures in performance mode looked really blurry and almost like flat in Remake,
Oh yeah, I
and then they
remember
had to
that.
patch it. Like there was a
I
metal
remember that.
door down the way from Seventh Heaven in the apartment that you stayed in when you first got into the slums, and I did not know that the door was supposed to be wood. I thought it
Mm.
was a metal door because of how bad it looked. I, j- but I didn't go into it with a freaking jeweler's lens either. I was like, oh, it's solid gray or solid brown. Cool. That's a metal door. Fantastic. And I just moved on with my life. Then they put the patch in place, and then you see the details and the texture that was supposed to be there, and you're like, oh shit, that actually looks really fucking cool. But like, it doesn't affect the enjoyment of the game. Also, would you rather a game look gorgeous and have choppy 60 frames per second, or look a bit lower on the resolution and have a full stable 60 frames per, well, stable except for in two spots?
I
And like,
want my visuals.
you want your visuals. There's not a lot of games that I want the visuals over the smooth performance.
Not me. I mean, smooth performance is part of it, right? I don't want you guys to think that, oh, I can play something that's 10 frames per like I can't. Even like I mean, there's games where it started me off at performance, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, I can get a little bit better resolution with quality, and I switch it, and now my character's kind of doing like a breakdancing like Mr. Robot kind of deal, and I'm like, oh no, fuck that, and I go back. I don't mean that bad, but I mean like if the game is a steady like cap 30 or something like that and it looks great and I'm not feeling the stuttering or I'm not like I prefer it that way because visual like I tweeted I think today or yesterday I said we are for the most part most of us are visual creatures, you know, that's what attracts us to something first. And I really, especially how hard these developers work on some of these worlds where every little detail, I mean, look at Rebirth, for example. Like, I just got into right now I'm doing the Chocobo mission where you got to find the Chocobo and then fucking Chad just pops up like, oh, hey, I followed just like you. I was like, the whole world could be my life. I'm like, shut the fuck up, Chad. What do you want me to do this time? You know? And so I'm there, so I haven't really gotten too much, but it took me like an hour and a half just to get from where the inn owner was like, all right, go underneath and escape that way. From that part to the chocobo. because I was just exploring the. I even recorded Cloud swimming. I'm like,
Yeah,
that you could have never done in remake, and that's when it really started to click, and that's when you start to see my tweets. Like, yeah, Rebirth is that's it's it. That's the one right here
you
in
did it.
comparison to remake. Like this, I can get behind this because with Final Fantasy, can we get into it now? Is that cool?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Because with Final Fantasy VII remake, the problem with the game was never the story or how it's kind of confusing, right? Because you get bits and pieces of the story, you don't really get everything up front, so there's a lot of lingering questions. And on Rebirth, right away, like in the first couple hours, you get a lot answered, right? So, but that wasn't at all because we're used to the mystery in games. We just talked about how the stories of these games are so secretive, so it's hard to tell what's going to be what and what we can endorse, right? But my biggest complaint with Intergrade, which comes down to the nostalgia thing, is what you told me earlier, Thrifty, here was that a lot of the things that I kind of complained about, they fixed in Rebirth. And you also told me that a lot of people also agree with some of the things that I said, right? Well, if that's the case, why have you guys been calling this game a masterpiece was when it hasn't? Now, I'll let you rebuttal here in a little bit, but my biggest complaint with Remake is first off, the combat. The combat was atrocious. Cloud felt like a tank. I don't even know why they have blocking in the game because obviously you have to finish the animation because, before it blocks. And I know some games do that. It's not a rebirth or a remake specific thing, but it's just it was so frustrating because some parts of the combat was so fluid. Like with Cloud, what's it called when you put it in combat mode? I think it's called. Like he just goes ham and it's powerful. But the game makes the combat where you have to be tactical, right? What's the name of Shinra's son? Rufus.
Rufus.
Like that fight, dude. So backtrack a little bit. When I before I went to the section where Tifa was in the Chocobo carriage about to go
Mm-hmm.
see whatever his name is, right around that point, I decided to put the game in easy mode and just zoom through it. At first, I was doing all the side quests just like I normally would, like with Horizon or Ghost, right? I will do everything, do the main quest and everything I can get in there. But I realized that the combat did not allow me for that because I kept dying a lot and getting my ass whooped and having to manage potions and like materia and all that. Like I just couldn't get a grip on it. And then you add the what's it called? The streamline of it, the that you guys commented on my post, how it's not open world, the opposite of that.
Oh, linear.
Linear. Now, the linear part in general isn't a problem because I can play a
No, but it
linear
was
game.
so slow.
It
Like,
was so slow, and add the combination of Cloud moving like a tank, add the combination of Barrett's gun being so damn underpowered, then add the combination of not Tifa, the other one, Aaron, being basically a support cast and like a health, like a medic, if you're talking about shooters, just a combination of all those things really started to get to me. And that was my biggest complaint. Now I get into Rebirth and they fixed a lot of that crap. I mean,
mm-hmm.
Aaron is still kind of a support
Aerith.
medical kind of
Aerith.
Aerith. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend your guys' freaking NPC wife here,
At
but
first, when you
Aerith,
said Aaron, I was like, who in the actual fuck are you talking about? I was like, there's no Aaron in the game. And then I realized after, with context clues, who you were talking about. I was like, oh, Aerith. Got it.
yep. Now the one thing I will say is Tifa's combat was the best part. And then I didn't finish playing Intergrade, but I played a little bit just to kind of check it out. And is it Yuffie or Duffy?
Yuffie.
Yuffie. I really love Yuffie's combat in that as well. I
This
think that
motherfucker
if they
just said
gave
Duffy. Fucking hell.
whatever Officer Duffy,
Mm-hmm.
Yuffie and Tifa, I think if they would have made the combat similar to that fluidity because Tifa and Yuffie's combat felt like a video game character
Yes.
fighter.
Yep.
Cloud did not feel like that. He's logging around this heavy ass sword and whatever. But that's my main complaint. It wasn't that the game was linear. It's just that now it's linear and the linear part of it is kind of ass and it's slow. And the story, oh, the story. That's the other 50% of why I really did not like the game. I understand that they're making 3 games of this, right? I understand that. But the first game, the plot lines were so far in between that you really lose interest. I mean, there was so many times in the game where I'm just doing the main quest at this point where I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the point of this? What's the end goal here? And I was lost in trying to figure out
It's to
what
stop
I'm playing
Sephiroth,
for.
to change your destiny. To
I
like,
get that.
what the hell? The whole game is about stopping Sephiroth and
I
changing
know
your
that.
destiny.
But the way to get there was the boring part. We all know it's Sephiroth. That's the Sephiroth. I understand that's the main goal of the game. But all the little goals to get to that main one were just so damn boring. And look, I get why they had to do it this way, right? Because of character building. And look, and I will be honest with you, by the end of the first game, I did feel attached to the characters. I really enjoyed the characters. I really like Barrett and Claude and all of them. I really like them. And then Breath 13 at the end got added, and I was really like, oh, I want to play as him. And I was a little hurt when I found out that I couldn't play as him. But that's besides the point. But then I started thinking, I feel bamboozled because Thrifty, Nelson, a lot of people online were calling this game a masterpiece. Well, how can you call it a masterpiece when you agree with a lot of the same shit that I'm calling out? It is because of nostalgia. Because you guys played the first game, you guys got the whole game at once in 3 discs, which by the way is impressive. And you guys got to play from A to Z, and you got the ups and downs of the whole thing in one continuous game.
Hey,
Not
let me
me.
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
You're wrong, Josh. It's not a masterpiece.
So hang on, because you're equating masterpiece with a near perfect game, and that's
No, I'm
fair.
not.
It sounds
I
like it.
am not. Because, well, first, Cyberpunk to me is a masterpiece, and that was nowhere near. That was the most broken game I actually played in my life up to that point. So it's not about the game having to be perfect, but this game, 50% is a story, 50% is the game mechanics. There's games that I play, like Banishers. I just beat that game, stuck 40 hours into it. The combat in that game is rudimentary. Is literally R1 light attack, R2 heavy attack, and then you get a special move, and that's it. That is it. And then they put a little twist in there by switching to his girlfriend. I forget her name, but it's the same thing with her. R1 punch, R2 her special ability, and that is it. Rudimentary. But why do I love that game? Because the other 50%, which was the story, kept me engaged. It was something different. It was something new. They mixed a couple different genres of game into one, and that was impressive to me. Final Fantasy Remake, the story, from what I've learned now in the by the end of it, was impressive to me as well. But the first 25 hours was not. It was your typical, we got to get the bad guy. The in between story building, that was the shittiest part of it all because you know what the end game is, but just how you get there is so, it drags for so long. I mean, some of these chapters are 3, 4 hours long, like the one where you're walking, where Aerith is walking you back to um 7, area 7,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden you see Tifa in the chocobo carriage. That section took me like 2 hours. And I'm just hearing Aerith talk about her boyfriend and I just got bitched out at her mom because her mom's like, you're a soldier, her ex boy was a soldier, like it just dragged on. And that's when I told you that the dialogue was super childish. And it's because I was in that part of the game, which
So what's
looking at
crazy
it,
is what you're saying is dragging on is world building. So I don't.
Yes, yes, the world building is dragging on because I just told Nate this, and Nate agrees with me 100% on this. The remake could have easily been the first two chapters of Rebirth, and it would have been a way more cohesive story. They don't need three games; they only needed two. Just me, because I don't know the whole story. I never played the first one, so I don't have nostalgia and that full picture to go based off of. I'm just going based off remake itself as its own game, as its own product, without expecting a part two or a part three or a pre-game or anything like that. To me, they could have condensed the story in two chapters in Rebirth, and I would have got more out of it. Now I understand that we have to fall in love with the characters, but man, there's way better ways to do it and way more effective ways.
So if okay, there is Josh and I have kind of actually I brought it up to him. There is a section in Rebirth that if the forced slow spots bothered you walking through the corridors and stuff. So here's the other thing that you have to realize. At that time there was a big push in gaming using the PS4 Pro to not have loading screens. Okay? The way Square Enix got around it was when you're walking through the corridor, the next section is loading. Okay?
Yeah, it's
That's
kind of like
just the
God of
fact.
War when he goes through a crack in the wall, or when you go down an elevator. Like, there's ways of doing it. I don't want. Why are you giving them an excuse, but then you bitch when another game does it? It's what I'm saying. Look, the the whole problem
But
that I
I
have is that
didn't.
it's not a masterpiece. Is what I'm saying. Now all three games combined into one, maybe, and I'll be the judge of that. Maybe I'll play the original one, but based on just remake itself, the game is not a masterpiece. It has a lot of problems. Half the game, which is the combat, was ass. The other half, which is the story, took way too long to drag out. You could have literally got the whole story done in just a couple chapters. That's it. The linear part, all that, that's nitpicking. But when you have two major problems of two big parts of the game, and then you add the linear part, how it slows you down, the combat being restrictive, the blocking being useless, and then you add the complexity of fighting some of these boss fights like Rufus and having to do things a certain way and having to use your materia and having to upgrade your weapons. And they made another good point with his friend who also feels the way that we do. She wasn't even upgrading her weapons. So imagine how hard the game was for her that she didn't even upgrade her weapons till I forgot the chapter you told me, like chapter 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that. How hard it must have been for her to get through the combat without having to upgrade anything. So for video games, right, we all love options, we all love flexibility. Final Fantasy Remake was the complete opposite of that. When people talk about movie games, that is the game that I'm thinking of, except that the story sucks, so it takes away the movie aspect of it. Play on
Mm,
hard. Dude, I had to play on easy just to get through it. You kidding me? I'm sorry. Josh, Your Highness, I will DM you about this later.
yeah, yeah. No, we all gonna talk. We're gonna have a fucking intervention. Uh, but no. And here's the thing. There is so one of the things that they've already said about Rebirth, so I'm not giving any spoilers away, is that the different chocobo in different regions can do different things. Some can climb
Josh, I played
mountains.
half the game on medium, and you can't tell me it doesn't suck when you can't block. Why do you even have that ability if you can't even use it?
But
And don't
you
tell me that
could
Claude
block.
doesn't move like a tank. Look at Tifa. I just said Tifa is a beast in the game, and I
But they're
wish that
different
everybody.
characters.
I
Like
understand that, but you can
different
give Claude a
characters should have
fluidity.
different styles. If they all played the same, then you'd be sitting here saying, well, they all played the same and every single character didn't
No,
feel
I wouldn't.
different.
Oh, but okay, if I take what you're saying, then so when Claude is doing a quadruple backward flip and then sliding under something and saving somebody, oh, that goes with his combat style. No, he's lean, he's tall, he should be able to move a certain way. Barrett, I expect that of Barrett because he's just a big dude, muscular, he's got the heavy gun on his arm. I don't expect him to move like
Ah,
Tifa, but I do expect Claude to move not as fluid as a female who weighs 115 pounds, but as a male who moves like he's 170 pounds. Claude moves like he weighs 300 pounds, and that's not a soldier. Once
All
again, he
right.
can't block. That big ass sword he
He,
can't block without fighting at the same time.
but he does block. You use the
Yeah.
block to stop bullets. Hey, we have a special guest incoming. Uh, and so, yeah, he'll be here in just a second. And Nate wants to be invited in here. And his name is Cloud, by the way. Like Cloud Sky, Cloud Sky.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I pronunciate the D Cloud.
Yeah, you can't forget the D. I'm going to give it to you every time. So,
Pause.
but listen, when you start getting into the second section, the second big open area, uh, one of the traversal mechanics is slow. And if it drives me nuts, I'm pretty sure it's going to make you lose your damn mind.
Are you talking about Rebirth?
Rebirth. It's the only time I have found this problem
Well,
in the
that won't
game.
even bother me because I know the capabilities of the game. The
Also,
remake part,
it adds a level of verticality to the game that I think is awesome because like it literally has you going and searching and oh, you see it in the trailers? Okay, cool. So the gray chocobo, you can climb up mountains with it. And
yeah, yeah.
so when you climb up the side of mountains, it's very, very slow. They come down the mountain pretty fast, but like going up, it's super, super slow.
Well, you would
And
expect that, right? Going uphill is slower than going downhill.
yeah, but it's a slog. Like cuz and part of it is because in the original Final Fantasy, whatever if you had a chocobo that could run on water, guess what? That dude ran the same on water as it ran on land. If
Mm.
it's because there were no physics. So part of it is, oh, I thought I was just about to scale these mountains. And Nate, what's up, dude? You wanted to jump in here. Thank you for coming on. What do you got to say, man?
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I recently finished the game and I've been talking to Will. I haven't had a chance to talk to you, and I know how big of a fan you are. And, in my particular podcast, Karaba is also a super fan. Um, I was just saying, like, because I seen he was struggling to, like, explain certain aspects, because we talked about it a lot, actually. And to one of the points that he made, for me, one of the big things for me, in JRPG specifically, is the character development. Um, and to me, look, and don't get me wrong, I understand. There's a difference in liking it and understanding it. So I understand why the growth wasn't but so much in this, because it's literally the start of the game, right? Like they can't, like I don't expect Cloud to be, you know, given therapy sessions by the end of it or anything. Um, it just kind of felt like the growth of like the character growth was kind of stagnant, and it was very obvious to me that this was, even though this game is, potentially, unless you speed run it, it's potentially 40, 50, 60, 70 hours, whatever it takes you, right? Um, it was still very obvious to me in the limited character growth and development that it was just very early on, and they just felt like they were holding back the whole time when it was like I was really looking for that growth. Which again is something that I understand, like I said, from a standpoint that you're not going to get right, largely because Karaba, who I explained to you, is a real big fan of the game, especially the original. Several times we kept telling him, "Well, you're excited for the game and how it's developing because you played the original and you are constantly referencing the original." He tried to say he wasn't, but several times when we were having the conversation, he goes, "Well, if you played the original, you would know that." And I was like, "You see, you
And
have to
Nate,
keep referencing the
Well, so
original."
sure,
Thrifty just
and
did it right now with the chocobo going up and down the hill. He's like in the water physics in the original, there was no physics, so
there
he
wasn't
did the
none.
same thing here.
But like,
I mean,
so
that was a cool fun fact thing, but yeah.
so like, yes, and I will say this, and I said it earlier, I think before you were here. Uh,
Hmm.
it's I there's not as much blatant fan service in this in Rebirth. It's there, but it's more of its own. I would actually look at somebody and say, "Hey, if you've never played Remake, that's fine. You can play
Hmm.
Rebirth, watch the recap, and go in, and you will have an absolute blast."
I should have
Because
done that.
I really, you should have. I really
As much of
feel
a
like
fan as you are, I'm surprised you would say that, bro. because I
Well,
felt like it was intrinsic and necessary because part of the thing for me when you're going into Rebirth is not just the story that you need to know, it's to appreciate a lot because this is a big thing. This was a
Yes.
huge thing for me with Infinite, right? And of course that's a direct sequel, but you never these people are not going to appreciate the changes that have happened because and this is where I got on Karaba specifically. And like I told him, you can like the way he controls, but I mean, again, like he was saying earlier, Cloud in the cutscenes, that motherfucker is a ninja, and Cloud when you're playing him is so slow and like, oh my god, it's like trying to you have to block 400 years before and make sure you don't accidentally swing because he has to complete
Facts.
the entire attack and you can't cancel it and all this
The
other stuff.
animation.
Yeah, the animation. Now look, if it wasn't a problem, all I'm saying is if it wasn't a problem and it wasn't broke, they wouldn't have fixed it. Now
oh
in
no, they fixed
Rebirth,
that shit
Facts.
real quick.
yeah, in Rebirth, that man is going ape shit. Like
Yeah.
he is
Yeah.
slashing all over the screen, going crazy. He is nimble. He is flipping up under your whole square, and he's sliding up under them and
Yep.
tossing them in the air. And I was like, this is how I expect this man to control.
Yep. I'm
Like,
actually playing Cloud now. On Remake, I avoided him. I even select Barret as my party leader. That's how much I
yeah,
didn't like Cloud. In this one, Cloud is my party leader.
So,
yeah. I mean, I think he's awesome in this one.
Nate, the reason why I can say it is not because I don't think people shouldn't play Remake before
Hmm.
they play this, but I'm saying because the fan service is not as in your face as it was in Remake, you don't absolutely have to.
What do you
Like,
by fan service? What do you mean? Like the Easter eggs to the first one or something to the
yeah, so
original?
y'all talked about how a lot of the people who hype up Remake, myself included, do it, and generally speaking, we always reference the original, right? Why was the scene with Don Corneo so impactful? Because we saw it in the original, and seeing it with like actual graphics and actual realistic, like more realistic looking people, it made it hit home more. The like all of the things from remake were literally from well, almost all of the things. They changed it, of course. Destiny, fighting Destiny, the Whispers. I get that, but there was a ton more fan service and a ton more stuff linked to the original than I feel like there is in Rebirth, at least from the 21 hours that I've played in it so
Well,
far.
that's I'm glad you said that because that's the whole point of what we're saying that because you guys have that nostalgia, these things mean more to you. Therefore, you're gonna have a much higher appreciation for it, right? Because you've known about this and seen it is what you've wanted. But from somebody like me who's never played it before coming into this, there's nothing special about that. And now when you add on Cloud's combat, the linear parts of it and the slowing you down and the blocking, it just amounts to problems that I cannot see how this game is the masterpiece. Now saying the game is good, I can objectively say yes, it can be good. It's not good for me, but I can see why it may be good for you. But then saying that it's a masterpiece, I think that's where me and Nate draw the line where it's like, where? Now, if we take all three bodies of work like you guys had back in the 90s into one, the conversation may be different, but that's not where we're at now. Right now, we're at one game, and now the second game, and hopefully there's a third game.
Yeah.
Speaking of the third game, Genki, remember one of the accounts I told y'all to follow? Genki just posted 2 hours ago that all three of the Final Fantasy games are not set in stone exclusive to PlayStation. It's just the first two that were, or that are. And so, just like with Rebirth, we're going to have to wait and see. It's more than likely going to be exclusive, but it's not a guarantee, as was reported yesterday or earlier today. There was this thing that came out that said that the entirety of the trilogy will be exclusive to PlayStation, and that's not true. So just a bit of clarification, because I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the stream. I think that with the stuff that they have improved on, the attention to all of. I think they could have cut out two-thirds of the mini games, and the damn game would have been under 100 gigs to download. Like, there's so many games. There's so much
Yeah.
side shit that you can do. And one of the things that I really liked or like about Rebirth is like you mentioned Chadley. I that dude it annoyed me a little bit at the very beginning, but then when I got deeper into the second section, you're actually getting fed lore about the region and about the things in the region, like the monsters, the landscape, the terrain,
So more
the
world building.
yes, and literally they tie it to these world events that are side activities you can do, so you can literally decide how much of it you want or how little of it, but it all feeds in to a central main goal for the game. I
Okay.
have not had a quest yet where I'm literally sitting there going, okay, that was find 10 cats. And now that I found those 10 cats, what? Oh, I get a potion. That
Yeah,
that
that was also really annoying with remake.
Yeah.
The
that's
quest
that's
designs were
kind
so
of
bad.
rough. This
Hmm.
one now, oh, you have a quest to go fight this type of creature or whatnot. Well, what do you get afterwards? You get the ability to unlock it in the arena. You get information on it. You get to know its weaknesses, the things that help it get pressured and get staggered faster, and then while it's like you get all of that data on these different creature types by doing the missions, by doing the side content. You
Serving a
get
purpose.
yeah, it all
Yeah.
serves a purpose, and that's one of the things that I think RPGs in general have a hard time with. That's always why I've championed The Witcher 3 as having the best side quest of any game I've ever played,
It
because
does.
all of them feed the story. Some of them have better plot lines in them than the story.
Yeah.
And so seeing
I wish that
them
was kind of the part that some of the Japanese creators, because they frequently talk about Western developed games nowadays, but you always got to question which part are they taking from some of these games,
right.
and you hope that they're taking the good part, like you said, like the quest design from The Witcher and so on and so forth. The biggest thing for me personally with JRPG design, I need a lot of these people to get out of the vacuum they live in, um, and accept that one of the main things no one has time for these days. I'm sorry, none of us are in high school anymore. I don't have time to be aimlessly wandering around looking for stuff without a quest marker. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Facts.
I'm
I
Same
agree
sorry.
with
here.
you. I
Yeah,
agree.
I like they need to respect the gamer's time. I'm loving your product, but I also don't want to aimlessly wander around for an hour or two, get nowhere, and then have to go to bed. Like,
Hmm.
that's annoying. Like, that's something that Japanese devs have definitely not all of them, but a lot of them haven't really um kind of taken to heart just yet. We're gradually getting accessibility features and stuff like that to a degree. Um, but like a lot of the stuff, they're a little behind here and there.
I
And it's
mean,
like,
if they
yeah,
throw something in there on your way, nothing major, of course, because you don't want. But if they just throw a little something, okay, that's exciting, right? If you're on your way from point A to point B, and between there, you find some secret cave, right? Okay, it doesn't mean anything as far as progression or what abilities you can get or any, potions. But if you just find a little trinket or a little Easter egg, that stuff goes a long way. But we just, here's the world, no marker, figure it out. I think that's why I have a hard time with the Souls-like games because not only is the difficulty level, up there and the
yeah,
repetitiveness of the game, but then you get the story drip fed to you. You got to find it
Hmm.
yourself. You got to work at getting it. Now you got to work on just traveling, how to get there. And then when you get there, you're going to get mollywopped by some freaking monster that you got to fight 300 times for you to get the moveset down to be able to barely beat him. Like, ain't nobody
yeah.
got time for that, bro. I'm 36. I got I got a job. I got employees.
We're
I
the
got a
same age.
kid. Yeah, that's
And
like we
so
owe, man. Like I
so
just want to
Josh
get
and
in there,
I
feel accomplished.
Josh and I were actually talking about this because he plays games a lot faster than I do.
Hmm.
And him and I were talking, and he had started the game after me, and I had streamed it for 5 hours between the night of release and the morning after. And so he was like, "Hey, are you here yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just passed that." He goes, "Oh, I'm already here. I'm about to pass it." I was like, "Dude, how the hell?" And he was like, Are you using fast travel?" And I was like,
Yeah.
No, I haven't really. I don't think I've unlocked it yet." And he goes, "You ain't got to unlock it. It's just fucking there." And I was like, "Wait, what?" So I was like, "I've used it." No, exactly what I said was, "I've used it a little bit, but I don't think I've unlocked enough of it." And he was like, "No, it's if you visit somewhere, that quest marker, that world event, all of them are
Hmm.
fast travel points once you've been there and
Yeah.
once you've done that." So literally, I was able to speed through the rest of the grasslands because I had all my fast travel markers, and I was just going and clearing out the events and clearing out the
Hmm.
side quests using the fast travel markers. Saves a world of time, because what I don't want is to get involved in the story, and then let's say after, because the game has a pattern so far where you get a big section and then a linear, and then a big section and then a linear. And so
Hmm.
I don't want to get so lost in the big, huge open sections that
Yeah.
I kind of forget the purpose and goal of the story.
The actual main plot. Yeah.
And that almost happened in the grassland where I was like, okay, I still have to cross the fucking swamp. All right, I am way too many hours into this thing to not have crossed the swamp yet. And so,
Yeah.
but respecting gamers' times is important. I think that for what I had at the time when Final Fantasy
Hmm.
VII Remake came out, it is a masterpiece. In
No
in
way.
that time, for what they did with it.
Well, that's not a masterpiece then, because if you can't claim that same thing 10 years down the road, then it's not a masterpiece, Thrifty.
See, that's where I kind of disagree with people, because I can have a movie that I think is just a freaking fantastic, top tier, amazing movie. And several years later, this has actually happened with a few, several years later, I go back and I watch it and I'm like, oh man, that's not that good. But what has happened in that time? Maybe my worldview has changed a bit. Maybe the way I view what I want out of a movie has changed. Like
Very true.
there's so
But
many things that
Thrifty,
change as we grow that I can look at a piece of art and go, "That's a fucking masterpiece," and
that's
then 10
true.
years later go, you know what? It maybe wasn't that good. It
You're
maybe was an
right.
8.
But look at movies like The Godfather. Those
Uh
are
huh.
masterpieces. It doesn't matter how much you've developed in this world, doesn't matter how much you've grown, that movie will always be a masterpiece because it's a masterpiece. It was born as a masterpiece. Saying something like remake was good at the moment, and obviously now that you've gotten past it, and look, it's okay to say, I think, like for me right now, Cyberpunk, I've been saying for the last 6 months, for last year, that it's a masterpiece. It's okay to change my mind. So it's okay 5 years
Sure.
later that I've known more. I'm like, you know what? At the time I thought it was a masterpiece, but it's not anymore. But what you're saying is, at the time it was a masterpiece, and it's still a masterpiece today. That's what you're saying, and that's the disagreement. I'm not disagreeing that you at the time it was a masterpiece for you. I can see that. What I can't see is after everything you know about it, after getting rebirth and seeing the improvements, to still say that game is a masterpiece. And yes, Josh, that goes to you too.
Well, and part of the other thing with that, part of the other, damn, maybe it is the nostalgia bias. Okay, because I'm looking at it as I still don't have all three games,
Yeah.
and so I know the original is,
Hmm.
was, and will be a masterpiece forever, and I know that this will be that.
See, you
Does
know,
that make
so
sense?
it does make sense, but that's what me and Nate have been arguing,
Which,
is that you guys are referring because you guys know the picture. So when remake ended, you guys knew that there's more to the story, and you're now even more excited.
Oh,
For
that's
us,
where all the speculation came from.
well, yeah,
That's
for
where
us, we don't
all of the
know.
speculation came from.
But what I want to do is I don't want to play original 7 yet because this is my 7 for you. For what 7 was for you back then, this is what it is for me now, right?
Oh,
The
you
first
would
time
hate
I'm
the original
experiencing
so
it,
bad.
I you don't know that. So what I want to do is I want to finish playing this one. I want to finish playing the next one. Hopefully it comes out in a few years as well, maybe 2, 3. Now that they got I think it's gonna come out during the PS5 generation because this one came out now. So I think that if we can get it by 2027, then I'll play the remake and then I can compare the two to see what's better. But yeah, though I just don't see remake being a masterpiece at all.
That's Have you played Crisis Core yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Crisis Core
Oh no, no, I'm sorry.
is
No, I haven't. I haven't. Thought you were talking about Cyrus or whatever
I
it's
beat
called.
Crisis Core, but I beat it on PSP.
I
okay.
haven't beat it.
So Crisis Core, I played the
The
re-release
remake.
and yeah, the remake. And there were a lot of things in that game that I absolutely loved over remake. One was that game hella respects your time. Like
Yeah.
you can hop on 30 minutes, knock out two missions, turn it off, come back later, 20 minutes, knock out a mission, hop off. It is so freaking accessible to the gamer that doesn't have time. And a lot of that was because it was originally on the PSP. And
Yeah, I
so
remember that.
it was a mobile thing. You took it with you. You play it while you were at the doctor's office. So they had to have a way for you to get in, sit in the waiting room, play this one mission. Doctor calls you, you're ready to go. Cool. And so they had to build it in chunks like that. And I absolutely loved that because we talked earlier about games not respecting your time. And I feel like the more I man the less time I have, the more I hate fetch quest. Like it I'm just gonna be honest in that. Like I can't somebody made a comment today. I actually think it was Wooly uh turning being able to turn off the HUD on Horizon
Horizon.
Forbidden West. And I'm like he said something like that's the way the game was meant to be played and I'm like no. Absolutely not. Like that's not. There's no snowball's chance in hell that I'm doing that
Well,
because
how much of a fan are you of Horizon, for example? Like, do you consider it to be one of your favorite games, or is it just a good game that you've played?
it's a good game that I've played.
See, that's why that doesn't resonate with you. I love Horizon. Like, Horizon is top 5 favorite games ever. Well, the games as a, together, not
Yeah,
the
be
first one or the
careful
second one.
saying that because eventually somebody's going to call you on it. Like, there's always caveats when folks say, "Oh man, it's
I
the
said
top five best
mine.
game."
No, I said for me, and what I mean by that is the story, the concept, Aloy, like the whole thing. The
The whole
first game and
thing.
the
Yeah.
second
Yeah, yeah,
combined,
yeah.
right? So what Wooly said, I resonate with because when I play Horizon, I'm not looking to do quests. I'm not looking to progress the story. I'm not like that's not my main goal of the game. My main goal of the game is probably how you're doing Rebirth to just take absolutely everything in. And if I come across the quest and it flows with the vibe that I'm going with that day, then I'll do it. I have no rush to beat that game whatsoever. That's why I have over 100 and some hours in that game, is because I'm not looking to finish it. Because I'm of the thinking is once it's done, I won't get another one if ever, but at least for 4 or 5 more years. So let me just take my time, let me
Mm,
soak it all in. Where
yeah.
there's games like The Banisher that I like, right? It's cool, it's a little different, but I just want to beat it already. I'm having a good time while I'm playing it, but I probably won't revisit it again. So let's just check it off get rid of the backlog. So there's two types of games, and that's why maybe what Willie said doesn't resonate with you. Now, what Willie said with Horizon, the complete opposite, is what I think for not Resident Evil, Final Fantasy remake. I didn't do Once I got to that chocobo part, I said, fuck this. I didn't do no side quests. I just streamlined the main quest. I put it on easy mode and was just trying to knock it out as fast as I possibly could.
Yeah, I was pretty frustrated by that point, so I get you. once the chocobo thing showed up and they were just like, can you do these things? And they were like Barrett before we left was like, I feel like I want to help these people some more. What you think, bro? And I was like,
I'm
fuck
like, hell
everybody in
no.
this whole sector, bro. We out.
And
Like I was
then,
like, I don't give a fuck.
dude, how frustrating was the ending? Like you have to fight every boss fight like 3 times, and I'm like, oh my god, it doesn't end. Especially those three like spirit thingies that represent,
Oh, bro, they
Cloud.
were.
Oh
At
my
one point, I
god,
was like, are they gonna just keep respawning? Like I was like, but don't get
dude.
me wrong, that is a weird, annoying, like I gotta fight God at the end of every game
Yeah,
trope.
yeah,
For
Yeah,
yep.
so thank you
JRPGs.
for
So
saying that because
yeah.
in the JRPG world, the first end boss, quote unquote, that you fight is not the actual end boss. There's a different
Jeez.
Yeah.
form, there's a different level, there's a different reiteration of that same boss. Like uh in the original Final Fantasy VII, I think you had to fight like four different versions of
hmm
Sephiroth at the end, I think.
Mm,
Jesus.
I can't.
And it was a slog, and they had a little thing in that game where if you went in with your party at level 99,
hmm
the fight was damn near impossible.
Oh fuck that.
Not punishing you for grinding though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it was.
even with like Souls games, I've never had this feeling before and I never wished it before. Even Souls games, which I really dislike, I've never told myself I really wish I can hit like how you skip a cutscene. I never said I want to skip this boss fight ever until Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's the first time where after the second time I'm like, can I just skip this shit? Like I just want to move past it. Like I don't want to quit because I'm so close to the end, but like I'm done. I'm so fed up. If there was a gamer for hire where I could have like, dude, I'll give you $20 if you can just beat this last section for me, but I want to watch the story or you give me a recap, I would have. And that's the first time that's ever happened in my life.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just corrected. The final boss did have three forms, but it. Never mind. My bad. Yep.
No, you're good.
Uh,
No,
and
I was gonna
so
say though, that's the thing. I guess, like I said, with the only thing I'll say about it ultimately is that my real question, because this is what I asked Karaba, because like I told you, he's just as big of a fan like you are,
mhm.
is not thinking about, which is impossible. I know, because you know it. But I was like, remake on its own, not intermission, because that is not how the game launched. Because that's what apparently he was including, and that's why he gave it a 10. And then he said without intermission, he said he'd give it an 8. Because at first he kept saying masterpiece, masterpiece in the chat, and I was like, so you're telling me there's nothing in this game? Because as I was going through it, I was writing down like negative things, and he was agreeing with me, and I was like, okay, so if you agree with all these issues I have in the game,
Mhm.
how can you tell me that you can't find a an area where you would take points off? Like that was my thing, and I was like, now again, masterpiece of course doesn't mean perfect. That's not what that means. But I
Mm-mm.
was like, realistically, if I'm asking you for a score, how can you can't tell me you end up at a 10 when you agree with like 7 points of contention that I have with the game and the story? And I was like, so then eventually, he finally was like, well, it's probably like an 8. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. I was like, and I was like, but largely, like I said, the reason it was so he kept originally saying masterpiece was because he would get so frustrated in chat and be like, but you guys don't know the story though. So in the original, like he would
Yeah.
do it incessantly, and I'm like, I get it, because like if they remade something that you originally loved, and the whole thing, like you're gonna be like, cool. But like it's like for me right now, right? Like I have read Solo Leveling, if you guys have heard of that anime. So Solo Leveling came out years and years and years ago, and I read the breaks off of it. I've read the manhwa like 5 times, right? And it's amazing. The pacing is perfect, everything. It's amazing. And the anime came out, and they have basically taken like it only has 12 episodes this season, and they're on the eighth, and my man doesn't even have his main power yet. That happens in like the first 15 to like 17 pages. Like the pacing is terrible. Like as much as I love that series, I just tell everybody to read the damn manhwa. like because I'm telling you, bro, it's like edging somebody, bro. Like they're just like
Right?
every
Close to
freaking
death and
week.
shit.
Yeah, like dude, like they took a part in the book that was like a single chapter and made it a whole episode. And
Sheesh.
I was like, bro, I was like, he didn't even do nothing. He like went to the world, came back, and then realized, and it was done. And I was like, the hell? And that's kind of where I was like I said, like I felt like again that I think when somebody equated the time frame that you spend in remake is if you play the original is like the first 8 hours
Hmm.
or something. And I was like, I could tell because they're not allowing. It's like the characters want to evolve and they want to start to like show me character growth and stuff, but they're like, no, 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 you can't have it yet. You can't have it yet. Wait till Rebirth. You know what I'm saying? Like now, in the beginning of Rebirth, you're immediately seeing character growth, where people are starting to question things. They're starting to,
That
go through
was one of the
their
things.
emotions.
That was one of the things in Rebirth, and we gotta wrap it up. It's midnight, but that
Oh
was
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
things in Rebirth that I really like. There is for those who played the original, there is a
Hmm.
major plot spoiler in like the first 2 hours of Rebirth,
Yeah.
and I literally was streaming it, and I was
And
like,
you were
damn,
like, uh
I'm glad I had the spoiler warning on here because this is huge. How did they jump the shark already? We don't figure out what is figured out in Rebirth in the original. We don't figure it out until late in disc 2. And so
yeah.
like there's and a lot of it's the interaction between Tifa and Cloud
Hmm.
at the beginning after the Nibelheim incident.
Okay,
Some of the
don't
stuff
say
that's
anything. I don't want to know yet.
no.
Wait,
I'm not. I'm
aren't you
not
there
telling
already?
you. I'm not telling
Oh
you
yeah, he's
what
not gonna tell us a
Uh,
it's.
spoiler. Yeah.
But it's just at that moment. So right
Hmm.
after. So an hour to an hour and a half. Two, if you really took your time in Nibelheim,
Hmm.
in that flashback that was in the demo.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here, and I'm Josh and I are damn near losing our collective fucking consciousness in the chat. He's in the chat and I'm gaming. And I'm like, I can't believe they put that in right now. Like I can't believe they
Yeah.
did it. Are
They just
right
kind of
now?
threw it in there.
They
Yeah.
just did. And I'm like, "Oh, Tifa, you have teeth to you. Holy shit."
okay, bro, you're okay. You don't have to keep
Oh,
going. You're
so good.
like
So good.
you're. I haven't got there. Does it have to
Anyways,
do anything with the Whispers of Destiny? Is that maybe why they did it early?
no, not at all. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, they've only referenced the whispers, so have fun with that. Because, and that's the other thing. Now I'm sitting here on the backs of Final Fantasy VII Remake, going, "Holy actual shit! This is fantastic. This, this." So okay. You know what?
Yeah, I gotta
Who's
get
your?
off, bro. It's freaking
Yeah,
midnight.
I gotta go too. Y'all have a good night.
Yeah.
As always, stay thrifty. Thanks for all the guests who came on.
Yeah. No doubt.
Freaking great show. It's 3 hours and 30 minutes long. Holy crap. Bye.